So if anybody got a strange email from me last week, our site was compromised at Ramera Township. So please disregard any emails you would have got from Thursday on, unless it's asking for money, and I'll give you my private email address, and if you could just send the money there, that would be great. With that, roll call, John, whenever you're ready.
Your Worship, all members are present with the exception of Councillor Evans, and alternate Councillor Walma is in attendance. And Councillor Lavoie is also absent.
Welcome, Councillor. Good to see you back. Anybody have to leave early today? Good for the council meeting, and there is a workshop, of course, this afternoon afterwards. Hopefully everybody can stay for that as well. So I'll look for approval of the agenda with Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Measures that the agenda for the April 25th, 2023 meeting of County Council be approved.
Everybody's heard the motion. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Do I have a disclosure of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Not seeing any. Presentations and deputations, we have none, so I'll look for the consent agenda and Councillor Burkett.
Thank you. Good morning, Your Worship. Through you, moved by myself, second by Councillor Norcross, that the Council communications and proclamations April 11th, 2023 to April 24th, 2023, having given due consideration, be received.
Thank you. Any questions on the consent? All in favor? That is carried. Adoption of council minutes. Deputy Warden Coghlan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Locks, that the following council minutes be confirmed and adopted, and the Committee of Whole reports be confirmed. County Council minutes, April 11th, 2023. Committee of the Whole report, April 11th, 2023. And Committee of the Whole confidential report, April 11th, 2023.
Questions on any of those minutes? All in favor? That is carried. And presentations and consideration of the Committee of the Whole report. So I'll start with Councillor Cox.
Good morning. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Walma, that the performance management recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report dated April 11th, 2023, including the confidential item, be approved.
Everybody heard the motion. Any items to be pulled? All in favor? That is carried. Next, Councillor Leduc, Human Services.
Thank you, Warden. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDonald, that the Human Services recommendation contained within the Committee of the Whole report dated April 11, 2023, including the confidential item, be approved.
Any questions on the agenda? All in favor? That is carried. And Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Walker that corporate services recommendations contained within the Committee of the Whole report dated April 11th, 2023 be approved.
So on the corporate report, all in favor? That is carried. Thank you. So we're moving right along. Presentation and consideration of special committee reports. I don't think we have any today. So presentations of Municipal Services Corporation minutes. Councillor Norcross, I think you have that motion.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you, of course. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Burkett, that the minutes of the Lake Simcoe Regional Airport Board dated April 12, 2023 be received.
Any questions on those minutes? All in favor? That is carried. Presentations of county officers report, we have none. Motions of which notice has been previously given, we have none. Any notices of motion? I wasn't told of any. Closed session, we have none. So the consideration of the bills. Councillor Norcross again.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Rollins, that bills numbers 7006-23, 770-23, 7008-23 be enacted as bylaws of the County of Simcoe.
On that motion, all in favor? That is carried. So I guess we're on to announcements. Meetings are kind of moving along here. We have a few of them. Just a reminder, there's a waste management workshop scheduled immediately after. I mentioned that early today. And further reminder that following the meeting today. Also, this is the last day to register for the May 9th. There's an optional blue bus tour of various county sites, such as the long-term care homes. So if you can make it at all, today is the last day to register for that May 9th tour. May 23rd, there's a planning workshop and a special council meeting. June 13th, there's a strategic planning session part 1. And I've lost my other page here. Hang on. And June 27th, there's a strategic planning session, part 2. We've tried again to keep them all on Tuesdays so that it can work out better with everybody's schedule. Any other announcements that are required? Yes, Councillor Measures.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I wanted to bring members of the House a little sporting news. Simcoe County is the home to some very successful and very competitive Junior C hockey teams. We have many Junior C hockey teams across Simcoe, and I would hope that this House would join me and my municipality in supporting the Junior C Stainer Siskins as they go on to the North Conference Finals for the PJHL. Interesting, Your Worship, I had the opportunity to attend Mount Forest, where the Mount Forest Patriots are playing the Stainer Siskins, and I met His Worship Andy Lennox, who is the Warden of Wellington County. He brings greetings to you and to me, and we've exchanged flags. So there will be a great ceremony, I'm sure, in the offices of North Wellington when Kenilworth they fly the Clearview Township flag when the Siskins win. What do you say, Your Worship?
Good. And Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say that after a long, since 2020, we were supposed to have the Ontario Small Urban Municipal Conference in Brant County, and in 2023, it's finally happening. And so I'm looking forward to attending that. County will be well represented there. There will be a presentation from Tiny Township CAO on short-term accommodation, and Innisfil staff will be also doing a presentation on our traffic calming strategy. So really looking forward to that. And for those who like to plan ahead, the 2024 annual conference will be in the city of Orillia.
Oh, all right. Perfect. Any other announcements? Okay, with that, I'll go for the confirmatory bylaw. Councillor Norcross.
Thanks, Your Worship. Through you, moved by myself, seconded by alternate Councillor Walma, that bill number 7009-23 be enacted as a bylaw of the County of Simcoe.
All in favor? That is carried. And now we look for a mover and a seconder that the April 25th, 2023 meeting of County Council be adjourned at 9:10. I'm going to say it by the time I get it. Can I have a mover? Councillor Van Stavern, second by Councillor Smith. All in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Mike Smith, yeah. So with that, we'll take a few minutes. I'll disrobe.
Please rise.
It's all right, John, I got it. You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, we'll start the meeting, folks. Okay, well, apparently it's fixed already. I guess the key is not to let me near the computers, and they work fine. So, okay, order. If we can do our roll call quick.
Your Worship, all members are present, with the exception of Orillia Councillor Fallis, Councillor Lavoie, Barry Mayor Nuttall, and once again we have alternate Councillor Walma sitting in for Councillor Evans.
Thank you. So with the approval of I'll ask for approval of agenda from Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Cox that the agenda for April 25th, 2023 meeting of the Committee of the Whole be approved.
All in favor? That is carried. Do I have a declaration of pecuniary interest by any member of council? Not seeing any, so with that, we'll go on to the presentations and delegations of all sections. Okay, so we've got Jody Levesque, President and CEO of the Stevenson Memorial Hospital, is coming up to do a presentation. So whenever you're ready.
Your Worship, County Councillors, thank you for the opportunity to meet live virtual today. Last year we had to do it virtually, and it sure is a pleasure to see you all today in person. As folks may know, I'm Jody Levesque. I'm the proud and privileged President and CEO of Stevenson Memorial Hospital in the sunny town of Alliston, and the current chair of the Simcoe County Hospital Alliance. It's my pleasure to speak to you today on behalf of the Alliance, most importantly to thank you for your tremendous support, and also to give you an update on our impact as community and regional healthcare organizations, our partnerships, and our unprecedented challenges with capacity and health human resources. As you may know, the Hospital Alliance was established in 2002 to advise Simcoe County of ongoing hospital capital needs and to ensure the county's generous investment is equitably distributed. We are also grateful for the many years of support from before the Alliance began. The Alliance includes the county and 7 hospitals providing health care to county residents. And I'd like to introduce my Alliance colleagues. First of all, Jane Sinclair, the wonderful General Manager of Health and Emergency Services here at the County of Simcoe. Hi, Jane. Mike Lacroix, he's the CEO at Collingwood General and Marine Hospital. He was here last year as intern, but he has signed on the dotted line, and we welcome him today as our official CEO of Collingwood, named last June. Matt Lawson, the CEO of Georgian Bay General Hospital. He's taken over for Gail Hunt when she moved to Royal Victoria Hospital. And beside Matt is Gail Hunt from Royal Vic. Welcome, Gail. Beside that is Nadia Sunderley, who's a fantastic psychiatrist and was appointed the CEO of Waypoint Center for Mental Health Care after Carol Lambie's retirement in 2022. And last but not least on the far end is Carmen Stumpo, the CEO of Aurelius Soldiers Memorial Hospital. I can tell you that's a fantastic crew of CEOs. To give you an idea of the areas we cover in the county and beyond, we've included a map to pinpointing each of the hospitals' location. You can see our proximity to one another and the immense geography we cover in the county and beyond its borders. Our by the numbers slide gives you a snapshot of how much our hospitals manage with combined healthcare and human resource statistics for the region. These stats represent the hospital's fiscal year of April 1st, 2021 through to March 31st, 2022. Our hospitals have continued to manage high volumes of patients. If you take a look, over 77,000 surgical cases, over 53,000 cardiac cases, over 172,000 cancer visits, over 343,000 emergency department visits, managed by 11,795 employees, 1,735 physicians, and 622 dedicated volunteers. The total salaries and wages combined for our hospitals is over $822 million, which is invested back in our local economies. This slide provides an overview of how hospital capital projects are funded in Ontario. Traditionally, the provincial government does fund 90% of approved brick and mortar construction, but the remaining 10% of the cost must be funded by what is called the local share. These are the funds raised locally by hospital foundations, including investments made by municipalities like the County of Simcoe. With added costs associated, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, better known as FF&E, it's not funded by the ministry, as well as funds associated with parking fees for patients and visitors. The local share really is realistically closer to 30%, while the ministry covers the remaining 70% once the project is complete. I shared last year, and I share again this year, my concerns about the inflationary costs related to construction resources and the supply issues stemming from the pandemic. Suffice it to say, over the next 30 years, billions, not millions, will need to be invested in hospital infrastructure projects. There's a process that the Ministry of Health has laid out in terms of hospital capital planning that we are required to follow. In 2010, the ministry created this slide. Many of you have seen it. It's the 5-stage, 6-step capital approval process for projects over 10 million. I state that this journey is a marathon, not a sprint. The ministry has recently updated the hospital capital planning and approval process, and that's the slide you see in front of you, with 3 stages, with sub-stages. It's now the equivalent of 9 overall stages. While in large parts it's the same in terms of planning work to complete, the stages have been categorized into early planning, detailed planning, and finally construction. Government approvals are required along the way. Specifically, hospitals need to receive approval to move from the pre-cap submission to the early planning stages, and then from detailed planning to construction phase. We are extremely grateful that Simcoe County renewed its funding to our hospitals in 2017 and invested $45 million over 15 years. At this time, the bulk of the allocation will go to Stevenson Memorial and Collingwood General Marine's capital projects. The Alliance has fully supported major sponsorship of both Collingwood and Stevenson. Both of these hospitals are working diligently to meet milestones through the major capital planning process. But we also want to share our joint thanks for the $1.8 million in contributions being made to our hospitals for 2021. Royal Vic received over $8,000, South Lake received a little over $3,600, Aurelia Soldiers Memorial received $788,000, and Georgian Bay General Hospital received $1 million. The County of Simcoe has continued to provide funding in support of our hospitals, and we share a joint thanks for these critical contributions. In the past few years, GBGH has used Simcoe County funding to pay the balance remaining on its CT scanner and complete extensive renovations to the hospital's medical device sterilization department. The county's $1.28 million capital investment in the Community Health Hub in Midland helped to realize the vision of a modern medical building of multiple partners collaborating to provide one-stop access to mental health and physical health services. The hub is home to Waypoint's outpatient and community services, including the new Family, Child, and Youth Mental Health Program, the Chicomet Community Health Center, the North Simcoe Youth Wellness Hub, Patient, Client, and Family Council, and rapid access to addiction medicine, along with other partners. RVH's Simcoe-Muskoka Regional Child and Youth Mental Health Program continues to provide services in response to the region's overwhelming need for mental health supports for child and youth. RVH's Child and Youth Mental Health Program has an 8-bed inpatient unit that supported 2,443 admissions, and its day program has had over 2,900 visits. The day program includes a high school class, better known for those as a Section 23 class, and those are for kids who would otherwise not be able to attend a regular school due to a mental health issue. In Aurelia, the County of Simcoe presented Aurelia Soldiers Memorial with a check for $788,806 in September of 2022 in support of the project that brought a brand new CT scanner to its DI department. The donation went towards the cost associated with removing the old CT and completing the extensive renovations required that allowed for a new installation of that technology. County funding for Collingwood and Stevenson has been allocated toward their new hospitals. County funds will flow to the hospital once they receive approval to move from the planning stage to the implementation stage. Alliance hospitals continue to find ways to deliver care more effectively and to be innovative. One way we do this is by continuing to forge new partnerships with each other, with community partners, and with municipalities. The County of Simcoe is one of our most important partners, particularly with our partnership with the county's paramedics and how we work together with our emergency department staff to support patients, as well as our work that's come on the forefront with Ontario health teams. By working together, we're stronger. I want to highlight a number of ways that our hospitals partners work with each other as patients move across the region to receive the care they need. In 2018, Stevenson Memorial, South Lake Regional Health Center, and Oak Valley Health, Markham Stouffville Hospital, launched SHINE, and that's a shared health information network exchange. It's a new electronic medical system, Meditech. It allows physicians and healthcare professionals seamless access to patient information across all 3 hospital sites. The Patient Connect portal was launched in 2019, providing patients with access to the healthcare information across these sites. RVH, Collingwood, Georgian Bay, and Headwaters in Orangeville partnered to create Care4, an electronic health record partnership across those 4 sites. They also released their My Healthcare patient portal, giving patients access to their own healthcare information. As part of the Ontario Regional Renal Program, Stevenson has a partnership with RVH as the regional provider. The dialysis clinic performs hemodialysis at Stevenson as part of the program, and we have a deep integrated partnership with RVH. Aurelia's Soldiers Memorial has partnerships with Georgian Bay and Collingwood as they're the regional renal program provider. Aurelia also partners with RVH and Waypoint with regional acute mental health inpatient services. So the amount of collaboration with our partnerships is strong. Each of our hospitals has undertaken significant amount of work to create and contribute to Ontario health teams. This was initiated by the provincial government in 2019. These teams offer a new model of healthcare delivery that puts patients, families, and caregivers at the center of the healthcare system. OHTs are intended to improve the coordination of care and services for patients and their families and caregivers across multiple care settings. The OHTs in your county are the Berrien Area OHT, the Couchiching OHT, the North Simcoe OHT, the South Georgian Bay OHT, the South Simcoe OHT, and the South Lake Community OHT. Waypoint is a partner in an OHT innovative model in the Centralized Ontario Specialized Health Network. I share a collective thanks to the county for your involvement in the Ontario Health Teams and its development. This collaboration is targeting integration and system transformation, and the involvement of the county is an integral partner for our seniors, paramedic services, and social services. It's deeply appreciated. There are also a number of ways that our Alliance hospitals are partnering with the county. The county, along with WENDAT, are integral partners with North Simcoe Muskoka Specialized Geriatric Services. Specifically, this integrated regional program supports frail older adults who require specialized assessment for geriatric mental health issues in the community and in our long-term care homes. The county's new 16-bed behavioral support and transition unit at Georgian Manor is a valuable resource to our region in the care of older adults with cognitive impairments and responsive behaviors. It's part of a system of geriatric mental health beds in the region, along with Waypoint's Horizon psychogeriatric program and the Loft supportive housing units in Penetang. RVH's Code STEMI protocol, first introduced to Simcoe County 2 years ago and then expanded to the entire region, is a partnership between Royal Victoria Hospital, the County of Simcoe Paramedic, Rama Paramedic, and Muskoka Paramedic Services, and the respective area hospitals. Since July of 2020, we've cared for almost 700 Code STEMI patients in Simcoe Muskoka. RVH's emergency preparedness relies on a strong partnership with the County of Simcoe. And most recently, the county joined RVH and 6 other community members for a mock code green in September. And for those who don't know what a mock code green is, it's an emergency evacuation of a site. The county is a partner in the centralized OHT for specialized populations, and we continue to welcome further opportunities to collaborate with its community paramedicine program that serves vulnerable populations and navigates to needed services. A new and exciting partnership which began this March, coordinated by the Berrien Area Ontario Health Team with partners at RVH, County of Simcoe, and area long-term care homes, will provide residents of long-term care homes direct transport to RVH's imaging department. Once there, they will be fast-tracked for an X-ray and then returned back to their long-term care home. The project reduces wait times and visits to our emergency department, leading to better care for area long-term care home residents. Waypoint was pleased to have the County of Simcoe support for the Have Hope campaign, which raised funds for the mental health first aid training. One of the issues that the hospitals continue to work at diligently is on ambulance offload times. This slide shows that you can see that ambulance offload times have been impacted over the course of the past year, primarily due to health human resources, our shortages in our hospitals. You can see that the trend in wait times increases significantly during this time frame, which was impacted by COVID-19. The Simcoe County Hospital Alliance appreciates the collaboration and effort of the County of Simcoe in working to reduce ambulance offload times. Our emergency departments have well-established partnerships with the paramedics, enhancing patient transitions and overall operations in our emergency departments. Some of this work includes an increase in the Ministry of Funding to expand the dedicated offload nurse program. That's in Orillia and Barrie. We have lean process design with the help of the county, looking at value stream mapping and facilitation to reduce hospital offload times. We're producing daily operational situation reports twice a day to keep a track of the volumes. We have self-triage process and offloading to waiting rooms for low acuity patients. But our challenges are deep. Hospitals across the province have been experiencing significant pressures and challenges over the past year, and our region is no exception. Due to population growth in many of our respective communities, emergency department volumes have seen a vast increase, which has impacted wait times. Occupancy rates in inpatients at hospitals across the region have also been extremely high, with an average occupancy rate of 95%. Virtual care options have been an innovative solution to help with some of these high volumes. Our hospitals also experience patient flow and bed capacity pressures, sometimes driven by ALC, also known as alternative level of care patients. From October 1st of 2022 to March 31st, 2023, nearly 2,500 beds in our hospital systems were occupied by ALC patients, meaning that they're not available for acute patients during this time frame. COVID-19 pressures still exist in our hospitals, with ongoing outbreaks, the closing of many community COVID-19 cold and flu clinics, and the province's removal of COVID expense reimbursement. It's also important to note that the aging infrastructure and lack of space in our hospitals create many challenges that we're managing through. Some of our hospitals are 40 years old. My hospital is 60 plus. Health Human Resources challenges have escalated over the past year due to unprecedented heights. I've never seen this in my career. As a result of the pressures brought on from the COVID-19 pandemic, staff are experiencing burnout, resulting in higher increased sick calls. I've seen many early retirements, and staff are abandoning the healthcare profession altogether. Some hospitals have had to close units temporarily due to lack of staffing. These shortages have impacted patient flow, from wait times to delays in admitting patients, which can trickle down to ambulance offload times. Hospitals are highly active in implementing recruitment strategies to try to bring the needed professions to our respective hospitals, but it is extremely competitive. To address these challenges, our hospitals have come up with several creative strategies. We have clinical extern programs, which provide immediate assistance and help create future pipelines for recruitment. Collingwood's been quite unique in a housing for healthcare site. We've had to use agency nursing in our respective hospitals. Regional strategies support staff, reduce burnout, and help connect HHR with appropriate resources have been led by Waypoint. We thank Waypoint's leadership in helping our very burnt out staff. Today, I've tried to outline our priorities, our projects, partnerships, and our vision for the future. We've also shared our collective challenges. It's no secret our healthcare system is facing extreme challenges. In fact, we know that our capacity will not keep up with the population growth and the healthcare demands that follow. In 5 years, the quality of care we can deliver will undoubtedly fall below recommended standards if we do not receive investments so needed. As such, we urge the county to revisit the Simcoe County Hospital Alliance agreement to ensure all residents will continue to be able to access the high standard of care where and when they need it. It's what the people of this region deserve. Each of our hospitals are investing their time and resources in capital planning projects to expand their capacity, try to modernize their facilities, and increase the space to help meet the growing population needs in Simcoe County. We appreciate the ongoing support of the County of Simcoe and are thankful for all the contributions to date. We know that by strong partnerships that we've created, we're working together with a systemic approach to healthcare that will benefit our communities today and to the future. I just want to take a moment to thank you all for your time and attention this morning. Thank you for your generous support and visionary leadership that each of you provide in your respective communities to provide, enable, expanded, and enhanced healthcare for the residents of Simcoe County. As a follow-up, you'll get a detailed slide on where each hospital is at with its major capital project. It couldn't go out in today's slide deck. I'd encourage you to look it over. It'll go out in the minutes. Over my tenure as chair, we've really tried to drive transparency and clarity for each other's hospital and look together how we can work to help advance these major capital projects. So again, look for the details and don't hesitate to connect with your respective local CEO if you've got questions about the vision of a future hospital in your community. And on that note, I'm happy to take any questions, and thank you again for your time.
Well, thank you, Jody, and thanks for coming in person. It is nice to see everybody in person and actually see faces again for a change. So when we're outside the hospital setting, of course. Councillor Norcross.
Thanks, Your Worship, through you. CEO Lebec, it's always great to see you. Of course, CEO of our hospital. Just in the original slide deck, you touched on the 90-10 split that the province promotes on the redevelopment of new hospitals, but at the bottom of it there, turns out to realistically be a 70-30 split. Since we're going through the redevelopment of our hospital, and we've raised tens of millions, you and your team have been leading the charge from the local share. Can you just touch on at what point do you find out that it's actually not a 90-10 split? Yeah. And it goes to a 70-30, and at what point do we get to stop going to the local share to raise the funds? Thanks, Your Worship.
Well, the mayor always asks tough questions, doesn't he? So, yeah, the province will tell you that when you're in your respective community that they provide 90% of building a new hospital. and that the 10% falls to your local foundations to raise. But as a hospital goes through its exercise of growth, and many of the slides you'll see is talking about an expansion. So for simplicity's sake, if you're running a hospital that's at 50 beds and your expansion goes to 100 beds, those net new 50 beds fall to the local share. It's called the fixture, furniture, and equipment. So anything that is net new on equipment capital falls to the FNFE. And what happens for hospitals is that 90-10 split becomes more like a 70-30 split. And that's been in my tenure in 3 other hospitals that have gone through major capital. So even though there may be a boast that the provincial government's paying 90% of the cost, it really falls down to 70% of the cost, and 30% falls around your respective community to raise the local share. I don't know if that helps answer the question.
It does. Thank you very much. Through the worship to the CEO.
Any other comments or questions? Councillor.
Thank you very much. Through your worship, as we start to get the asks or the sort of the lube, I guess, before the asks from our local hospitals, a lot of us, I'm sure, have been meeting with our CAOs and fundraising associations, kind of telegraphing the staggering capital costs. All of our hospitals in North Simcoe appear to be under the upgrade requirement, and it's hundreds of millions of dollars in costs that our small communities just we don't have. I mean, just it's out of control almost. Like, and they all have to be done. Like, we get it. Like, there's no arguing the need for the hospitals, and the value of what you guys do, bringing people together, helps to some degree. But I'm just wondering, you look at other, down in the GTA area where you see hospitals basically merging, so that you don't have the overhead of multiple boards, multiple CEOs, multiple chief nursing people, and they're all high-priced help. And bringing these hospitals together, and one of the things I've been wondering, especially for North Simcoe, would be like, has anyone ever considered, amalgamation of, for example, RVH and GBGH, so that, it's breaking up people's fiefdoms, and they're, there's also big salaries involved in this, but it would make more sense from a fundraising perspective to not just have a group like this, but actually truly amalgamate these hospitals, much like we've seen in the GT area and around Southern Ontario. So we achieve those efficiencies, those synergies, the cost savings that come with that, and knowing the costs are still there to do the upgrades, but now it can be spread around differently, rather than all these independent hospitals, each community, each putting their hand out for tens of millions of dollars from the local taxpayer. So, I mean, the same thing could be said for our municipalities, and we almost got there at some point, but that report just vanished into the ether. But I'm just wondering, has that ever been talked about as a viable solution, or are people still, kind of circling the wagons that they really want to keep their own independent hospitals?
So it's a great question. Amalgamation, I think you guys have been through that debate here yourselves. So I think what I would leave you with is that, and I'll speak from my example. I came from South Lake Regional Health Center, and we have a deep integration with that hospital. I was seconded there for a 5-year period to help with to focus on getting a redevelopment for our respective community. The challenge with amalgamation is that each hospital has its respective community board, and they're tenacious about protecting the interests of their respective community. So it's a big question. It's a decent question, but I can leave you with this, that we work diligently to look at how we can be efficient together. And if you looked at the amount of, at least when I was talking about the community partnerships and the level of integration, you'll see that the groups of CEOs work tirelessly to try to look for efficiencies and how we can deliver services at maximum and efficient cost. The idea of greater amalgamation is probably well beyond this skill set. I mean, that's something that local boards have to deal with. And if you look across the province over the 10-year period, smaller community hospitals that get amalgamated in larger systems, they're not the same. They're not the same. A community hospital is not a large regional player. So protecting services becomes a balance between delivering care for your local community and what your community looks like, and then regionalization. But I can leave you with this, that we work diligently to make sure that those efficiencies are addressed, even though we have 6 respective CEOs in different hospitals. I don't know if that answers your question adequately. The other challenge that I just would like to raise is that when you look at these costs of these hospitals. You know, in 2017, I put in our stage 2, and we had a capital cost estimate of 100,000 square foot expansion. We used $675 a square foot to construct a new hospital. IO is telling me that's more like $1,100. So projects that have doubled. A project that was $200 million is now $400 million, and the impact on local share is significant. So I acknowledge your concern around the rising costs.
Go ahead, Councillor Gordon.
Thanks. Just to follow up, and I have no doubt that the CAOs are all working collaboratively to get things done. I mean, they have to. There's no, I don't doubt that at all. I guess what I'm just suggesting is that because we, transfer patients between, our, for example, Midland Hospital and RVH and also down to South Lake routinely, we all kind of swim in the same pond, but we're still running our own independent hospitals with all the overhead, the millions of dollars in salary, right, and benefits that go to staffing each of these independent places to have that independent management executive core. That could be, and it's being done, so we're not really breaking any new ground here. That could be really leveraged where you still have that community-based board, although it's much like we're doing with OPP boards, it's a detachment-style board. So the communities still have voices. So I'm not trying to make a case here to dismantle hospitals and turn them all into one, but I'm just thinking we should probably be thinking about this, because it's not just one or two of the hospitals in our county that are looking for hundreds of millions of dollars from our taxpayers to try and build out expansions for services we clearly need. But does it make more sense then to find some savings right off the top by eliminating 5 sets of CEOs, 5 sets of all the C-suite people, and making a new board and getting $10 or $15 million a year in savings like that could go towards the expansion, or keep everything still as silos? And I guess that's my one challenging question, and I'm not proposing that this House does anything about it beyond. I just want to call it out that it's been something that I've been thinking about as we look to share services and try and find efficiencies in North Simcoe. I don't want to stop there. I want to let's challenge and see what we can do in the county more than what we've been doing now.
It's a great question. I might ask that this is, history has a way of repeating itself with these questions. So when Jim Wilson was in power and Mike Harris, we went from 178 hospitals in the province of Ontario to its current 122 hospitals. And some of the methodology looked at was around your health and the need to keep a building open, because if you have a STEMI or you have a major critical condition, you can't wait an hour and a half to get stabilization. Paramedics do a fantastic job, but you need to get to an emerge department. So the strategy back, and I'm dating myself here, under Mike Harris's leadership, he amalgamated all those hospitals and did what you were suggesting to what he felt was a strategic go. I'd encourage you to look at the political discourse that followed that amalgamation for those local communities, and what they felt they may have lost or gained. And I'd be happy to share that report with you.
Okay, I've got Councillor Smith, and then I'll go to Councillor Smith first, and then over here to Barry, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, through you to the House. I understand what my friend Councillor Gordon is speaking to, and I don't disagree with him. However, I think it's much deeper than that, and it's a much bigger problem than that. And I think we've heard it in this House over the years, and we'll continue to hear it, and that is that this is a provincial issue. This is not a municipal issue. It's not a county issue, although we're doing our part as best we can. But I would say that, I have the privilege to use at my choice Collingwood, Midland, or RVH. And all 3 of those hospitals, in my opinion, are second to none. Are they perfect? Far from it. But that I don't think is because of the staff that are there. I think that's just a situation where they're doing the best they can with what they have. And quite frankly, in this case, it's the province who's failing. And so I think that we all feel pretty passionate about our hospitals. I can tell you, when I think of that all-important golden hour, I do not want to travel to a hospital that is 50 miles away. I want to travel to a hospital that is 10 miles away or 5 miles away, because that's what it's about. At the end of the day, it's about saving lives. And the folks who work in our hospitals and our long-term care facilities, these people work hard. They're burnt out. and the province is failing, and they're failing miserably. And so I think this House needs to take our arguments, because I do agree that we do have to find a solution. When we look at the cost of building from 600, I think it was 670 a foot, to over 1,100, we see that in this House when we look at affordable housing. It's just not sustainable. And so when does the province step in and regulate what it's going to cost to build these facilities? When is the province going to do what they're elected to do, and that is make sure that the residents of all of our communities in our province get the service that they pay for through tax dollars very well in this province, in this country, and that we look after what's most important. And I can't think of anything more important than our health care. So when I look at this, I say we need to collectively take the fight to the province. If the province is going to tote its 90-10 when it's actually 70-30, then we need to make sure that the hospital, or sorry, the ministry knows that we're all aware of that, and you need to fix it. So I totally understand where my friend's coming from. Are there some synergies that can be fixed? Yes. Do our hospitals work together? Yes. Could we do better? Absolutely. But this is much deeper than that. It's a provincial matter, and I think that's where this House needs to be taking the argument. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Barry. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I echo the sentiments of the previous two councillors, and I don't want to repeat what's already been said. But just on the notion of amalgamation, I agree with you that, you know, some of these smaller, remote, rural hospitals being sucked up by the larger centres is not necessarily the way to go. But when I think about integration, there's a spectrum of integration, right? So you have formal amalgamation at one end, and then you've got, you know, partnerships, and we get along and talk once in a while at the other end. And I do think there's opportunity to sort of elaborate on what's been spoken of. In terms of integration, looking at governance integration. So are the boards right now, is there collaborative governance? Do you meet board to board on a regular basis? Administrative integration. There are opportunities to integrate from a back office administrative perspective, clinical integration as well, right? Aligning staff, sharing staff. So I do wonder if there's opportunity to go through some sort of integration exercise to look at where perhaps we can improve along the integration spectrum without going down the path of formal amalgamations, but really looking at cost efficiencies through that process.
Okay, Councillor Dolan.
Thank you, Worship. I would just add on to the argument that the provincial government needs to step up. If you consider all of the taxes that a person pays, be it property tax, sales tax, gas tax, municipalities get 9 cents of the tax dollar. The province gets 43 and the federal government gets 48. So it is unfair to put the burden on municipalities to pay for health infrastructure. Having said that, we are where we are, and it's our people who, I spent the weekend answering emails why we didn't have a walk-in clinic in Innisfil, and that is my job to get a doctor there. So there is that expectation that the local council can fix everything. But one of the things, and talking about efficiencies, I think better than reorganization and governance structure, I think the quick fix, and quick, you know, take that for what it is, but is to get those alternative level of care patients out of a hospital bed and into someplace that is they can be treated, it's better for them and it's better for the hospital, because it costs a lot more to keep somebody in a hospital bed than in the care that they really need. And I guess my question then, Mr. Lebec, is who is responsible for that? Is that, like, how do we get the province, or do we get involved in or do the hospitals get involved in having a wing that is ALC that gets an alternate level of care than a hospital patient would?
Yeah, so there are two different types of ministry, the Ministry of Long-Term Care and then the Ministry of Health that governs hospitals. But I can tell you that my CEO colleagues are measured by our ALC performance and the ability to, and it's on our quality improvement plan. Hospital CEOs are held accountable for that. So, and we take that rather seriously, even though it's not our book of business. So across the region, you'll see unique innovations done through Ontario Health Teams. In Alliston, for example, we have a 4-bed transitional care unit that we've established just recently to move ALC patients from hospital to be in a better place, to get the day programming and the stimulation they need in order to have a good recovery. And you're going to see that across the county. I think you're seeing more and more of us trying to work with our community partners to figure out what solutions we can have for the ALC dilemma that has been a problem since I joined a hospital back in 1987. So ALC is a dilemma and a problem that needs the coming together of both the Ministry of Long-Term Care and hospitals to work together. And I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree with respect to the investigating amalgamation where it's practical and makes sense. Although I think in North Simcoe's case, that's already happened, and that was the PGH, GBGH merger. So in effect in our area, that study where it makes sense has happened. I'm not sure going further than that from a circumference of those patients served, it would provide the best care. Thank you.
If I could just give a narrative on that. So I hear you guys. I hear talking about how you want us, the issue of amalgamation, but I also take a look at the examples that have gone over the course of my career, whether it's Erie Shores to Windsor, South Lake to Stevenson, Headwaters to William Osler. Those deep attempted amalgamations did not stay. They've grown into something that's deep, that has deep clinical integrations. But under the Public Hospitals Act and the regulation of a hospital being run by its own community board, it goes back to taking care of community interests. And there has to be a balance. I agree. I think there's none of us here want to see a wasted dollar. We're all working hard to make sure that we can find the efficiencies we need. But it's really amalgamation is, well, you guys went through it yourselves. You debated it here, I don't endlessly. About other municipalities, and so it's the balance between what is best for the community and how can we deliver things most effectively and efficiently. So those are the real questions that drive these things. Happy to look at how we can talk about integrations. Today I tried to highlight some of our partnerships, but I probably didn't do justice to the numerous. I could probably take up a full hour talking about how we work together as a hospital system and with our community partners to deliver care. And it's complex. Not all hospitals are the same. Some are regional centers, some are not. Some are community hospitals, some are not. Some are Schedule I hospitals, some are not. Was a Schedule I means that they're regulated under the Mental Health Act, another piece of legislation. These are complex undertakings. So, but I'm encouraging you to talk with your local CEO about your hospital's integration and work with the other systems. I think you'd be surprised at the breadth and depth of how hard we work to deliver service for community residents.
Okay, Councillor Sandu.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Levac, thank you for your presentation, and thanks to your colleagues for making the time to come down. The question I have is, and I think you touched on it a little bit in your presentation, is that when we met with the local physicians at the municipality level, we heard that our local hospitals don't talk the same language. And I'm not the expert, and I don't know how hospital administration works. But when they talk about EMRs, that all hospitals are not on the same system, has the Alliance looked at it? At least these 7 can be on, or others can be on the same system that would make efficient for the local level, and also at your level too?
So it's a great question. Thank you. It's an excellent question around health information systems. So I won't get into Ontario eHealth's plan for electronic records. It's been CEOs of hospitals that have really driven, along with our government, about how we can be efficient in delivering a health information system. So I talked briefly about the 4Care partnership, the Shine partnership. So I'll only speak to my own terms. To go ahead and purchase Meditech for a hospital, whether you're 2 beds or 1 million beds, it's $1 million investment. $1 million. The government doesn't pay for it. You have to look to local share and capital fundraising in your foundation. You've ever tried to sell an electronic record to a donor? Not an easy sell. So for us in our partnership with South Lake and Markham, The split on a $100 million investment is South Lake takes 65%, Markham Stouffville takes 35%, and Stevenson's portion is 5%. I paid 5% of $100 million. If I went out on my own, there's no way that that would be possible. The idea of hospitals working together to deliver HIS is one of the fastest rising costs in hospitals. And we're not getting funded for it. We'll get capital IT, but we don't get operating IT. We need people to run those systems. So hospitals working together is one example of how we've been extremely efficient in coming together across different regions to drive one health record. And ultimately to put the health record back in your hands, the patient. It's not the doctor's record. It's not the hospital's record, even though under law there are legislation about us being custodians of the health record. It's really your record because it's your results, it's your lab, it's your DI. It's your consult with the physician. So these patient portals that have come together, I think, are extremely unique and innovative solutions for health information systems. And I'm quite proud of how, at least in Simcoe County, how we've worked together to deliver what is almost the art of the impossible for health information systems for our residents. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor Cox.
I don't really have a question. I just have a comment. And I just want to thank all the hospitals. I know you work hard and work together. I'm on the Couchiching Health team, and I've also been on a Soldiers Hospital board. And this has been going on for a long time, and I know you all pull together and work very hard, just like we do. And I want to thank you for that. And I want to hope that from what Councillor Smith said, it is the province, but you always know that we are here as municipalities to give you as much support and principle as we can and to help you with the Simcoe County money that we provide you. So I know your staff work hard and I know you work hard, and I'd like you to take that back to thank them and continue working together as an alliance as you have in the past.
On behalf of my colleagues, thanks.
Okay, any other comments? Yes, at the back, Councillor Hamilton.
Sorry, I'd like to ask just one last, thank you, Your Worship, and through you. I'd like to ask one last provocative question here, and I just want to get your sense in terms of the CEOs within the Alliance, your sentiments on this. We know that the provincial healthcare spending in healthcare, the hospitals receive the lion's portion of that funding, right? We invest a lot into acute care as opposed to primary care and community care. And if you look at other health jurisdictions in the world, again, investments in primary care and home and community care really are, high quality, cost-effective approaches. I wonder if at any point the hospital sector, the acute care, would advocate on the best way to invest healthcare spending and really look at pivoting some of that spending to ensure that primary home and community cares are getting the appropriate amount of investments that they need from a prevention standpoint so that we can prevent some of the major issues and crises we're seeing within the acute sector.
No, it's a great question, and you're seeing that unfold with the work of Ontario health teams. So I can only talk from my own perspective. I've been an advocate for primary care to receive adequate funding in order to do the business of primary care, which helps keep people out of the emerge. So preventative upstream strategies are always welcomed. I know that all my colleagues are whether it's mental health to cardiac to COPD, whatever case mix group you want to throw at, we're looking at trying to work more closely within our OHT structure to deliver the care at the right place in the right time versus hospitals, which are the safety net. They are the absolute critical safety net when you're most acutely ill. And many times, if we have other parts of the system that can work more effectively and more efficiently and can get the right level of funding, it makes our jobs easier as CEOs. So it's a great question, and I think that's what your question really is the heart of what OHT work is.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and I do look forward to reaching the mature state of the OHTs over the next couple of years. I know it's early days, and there's been a lot of great work done to date. So thank you again. I echo what they've set up there. Appreciate the hard work.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you, Jody. Great presentation and great dialogue to go with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's always a pleasure to come here. And next year it'll be Carmen Stumpo will be taking over the chair of the Alliance. I'm done my term. So please give him a warm welcome and greet him with the same level of curiosity and questions for next year.
I'll make sure I wear my purple jacket, Carmen, when you're down here. How's that? Okay, with that, move on with our agenda. We'll go to performance management. Councillor Cox.
Recommendation, CCW 2023-123. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Fowler, second by Councillor Bell. that item CCW 23-123, dated April 25th, 2023, regarding Simcoe County Archives operation in March 2023 be received. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Museum activity report for January. A mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Fryer, second by Councillor Walker. That item CCW 2023, dated April 25th, regarding museum activity from January to March 2023, be received. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Now I will go to GM Wilcox to introduce our presenters for our next agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. Just while we're setting up here, this presentation is in alignment with the report that's before you for the Sustainable Operations report on our Climate Action Plan. Unfortunately, our consultant was supposed to be with us today. He's fallen ill. So what we've done is we've shortened the presentation to cover the introductory piece, to cover the main parts of the Climate Action Plan and what we're going through. At a future meeting, we will have that consultant back, and we, as will be mentioned in the report, we'll discuss what we're going to be bringing back later on. But what I will do is turn it over to our director, Don Himpwell, who will introduce the team and start with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, GM Wilcox. Good morning, Your Worship, Council, guests, and staff. We are pleased to provide this presentation today on the topic of climate change and climate action planning. We have a fair bit of material to work through, so we'll suggest that questions be held to the end, and I can confirm that these slides will be included in the minutes of the meeting for your future reference. Introducing your presenters today in order of appearance, we have myself and Catherine Payne, whom you've met previously in our procurement presentation, and your Sustainable Operations Supervisor, Angela Leach. Here's a quick overview of our agenda. We will start with a high-level overview of the climate change issue, review what needs to be done, what we have done at the county to date. We'll provide a quick overview of the PCP program and our recent greenhouse gas inventory results. We'll touch on target setting and the Climate Action Plan development process, and we will wrap up with any questions. The UN defines climate change as long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Of course, the Earth's climate has changed over millions of years, but there is no scientific dispute that human activities have been the main driver of the changes currently being experienced. Burning fossil fuels generates greenhouse gas emissions that act like a blanket, trapping the sun's heat and raising global temperatures. The Earth is now about 1.1 degrees C warmer since the late 1800s, and 2011 to 2020 was the warmest decade on record. This graph depicts levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere over the last 8,000 years. The right side of the graph, where the upward spike starts, shows the changes since the early 1900s, correlating with the start of the industrial age when gasoline and oil became popular sources of energy. If we focus in on that portion of the graph, we can see that in the early 1900s, when the internal combustion engine came online and the industrial age took off, carbon dioxide in the atmosphere increased rapidly, especially since 1960, when the use of fossil fuels became entrenched around the globe as the main and growing source of energy for a rapidly increasing global population. This graph focuses on global surface temperature, but extends back 25,000 years to show the last ice age and how temperatures rose over the 8,000 to 10,000 years that followed, leveling off around 10,000 years ago when humans began the intensification of agriculture. The last 10,000 years of relatively consistent temperatures is highlighted in the blue box, and in the gray box you can see the spike in temperatures on the right side that represents the last 120 years. As with CO2 levels, oh, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Bear with me, it's the slides. As with CO2 levels, if we focus in on the last 120 years, again, we see the rising temperature trend starting in the early 1900s and continuing up relatively quickly since that time. Climate change is now widespread, rapid, and intensifying, with scientists observing unprecedented changes in the Earth's climate in every region and across the whole climate system. As such, climate change is now deemed to be a crisis, also termed the climate emergency. Climate change has the potential to negatively impact global and local economies, expose people to new health and security threats, alter the natural systems that we all depend on for food, clean air, and water, and force the migration of millions of people as sea levels rise. The World Health Organization has described climate change as the greatest challenge of the 21st century. What needs to be done? We need to reach net zero as quickly as possible, but what exactly does that mean? We located a short video clip to provide an overview.
What is net zero? We release 55 gigatons of greenhouse gases into the air every year. To stop global warming, we have to get our greenhouse gas emissions down to zero. But for every country to immediately shut down all greenhouse gas releasing activities would be an enormous challenge, especially since some countries have built up an economic head start with no restrictions. So instead, we can use an approach called net zero. Net zero means that for every molecule of greenhouse gas we put into the air, we also take one out, making our net emissions zero. Net zero requires us to make big changes today, use less, more efficiently, and even bigger technological changes for the future, like replacing all greenhouse gas emitting activities with clean ones. We'll also have to capture greenhouse gases from the air and store them permanently. And yet, net zero is our best chance for a sustainable future.
Since 2018, net zero by 2050 has been the benchmark and aligns with the 2015 Paris Agreement. But with little progress made since 2015 and CO2 levels and temperatures both still rising, it is clear that change must occur now more quickly. Just last week, the G7 climate talks in Japan issued a statement calling for an interim target of 45% reduction in emissions by 2030 and 60% by 2035 relative to their 2019 levels. They also stated that countries must aim to rely on predominantly clean energy by 2035. I would now invite Catherine to speak about the county's actions to date and the PCP program.
Thank you, Dawn. With the creation of the Sustainable Operations Team in 2012, staff began to compile detailed records of our utility usage across facilities and measure energy use intensity. This data is reported to the province in June of each year, as required by the Electricity Act. The graph shows our progress in reducing energy since 2015 and represents the elimination of 824 tons of GHGs over time. In order to reduce our corporate GHG emissions, we must understand where they come from in our operations. In 2018, County Council endorsed participation in the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Protection program that includes the 5 milestones outlined here. The creation of a baseline GHG inventory is the first step, which is now complete, providing us with information we need to broaden and increase the county's GHG reduction efforts. The corporation's greenhouse gas emissions baseline inventory identified our top emitting areas as solid waste, buildings, and fleet. Based on the preliminary results of our 2021 GHG baseline inventory, annual tons of GHG emissions are estimated here. Solid waste, fleet, and buildings will be the key areas for staff to explore for reduction opportunities at our outset. An internal working group has been created that includes GM Wilcox, sustainable operations staff, representatives from all departments, including ad hoc members such as HR, IT, and legal. The group will delve into the details of these numbers, make recommendations to Council, and steer this multi-year project, instilling a permanent focus on GHG reduction in operations at the County of Simcoe. At this time, I'll pass things over to Angela, who will speak to milestones 2 and 3.
Thank you, Catherine. So as outlined in the PCP program, it's comprised of 5 milestones. Milestones 2 and 3 are complex and require extensive analysis and modeling, as well as an experience in the creation of implementation of climate action plans. For this reason, in 2022, the county engaged Sustainable Solutions Group, SSG, to assist in these efforts. SSG has developed plans across Canada and worked extensively in Ontario with municipal governments, including the cities of Toronto and Hamilton, the region of Peel, and the city of Orillia. In terms of target setting, this slide provides some examples of targets and commitments made by municipalities that are currently in the process of being achieved via corporate climate action plans. The common thread in these targets is that the commitment is to reduce emissions by a percentage, typically 45 to 65% from a baseline emission starting point, and over timeframes that will result in net zero somewhere between 2030 and 2050. Similarly, the emissions reduction target for the county sets will land in the range somewhere between the science-based target and the federal and PCP target shown on the graph below. This slide provides a sample of published corporate climate action plans for various municipalities. Together with SSG and the internal working group representing all emitting departments, staff's goal is to develop the county's corporate climate action plan and the reduction target, bringing both to council for consideration, approval, and publishing as soon as possible. The climate action plan will take into consideration all of our GHG emissions and create a pathway to reduce our reduction target, or to reach our reduction target. In addition to reducing our emissions, we must also plan to adapt to the impacts of climate change that are happening now. We do this by building resilience into our asset management planning, maintenance processes, and understanding how the region's weather will change over the coming decades. There'll be more to come on this in both areas as we move forward. I'll now pass it back to Dawn for a wrap-up.
Thanks, Angela. There is good news, and that is that we are not alone. Although it has taken too long, similar to how the world came together to deal with the global pandemic, the world is now coming together to deal with climate change. We have all experienced how acid rain, seatbelts, tobacco, asbestos, drinking and driving, and accessibility have been brought to the fore in our lifetime. And the need to reduce carbon is now becoming a key societal issue. The latest report of the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change was released last month, and the UN Secretary General pointed out that we've never been better equipped to solve the climate challenge, but we must move at warp speed and think about everything, everywhere, all at once. Staff will be returning to Council with a follow-up presentation on climate action planning, bringing a reduction target for consideration in either June or August, and providing the initial draft of the climate action plan for Council's approval in the fall of 2023. Thank you, and we are happy to take any questions.
Any questions from Council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I would need a mover and a seconder for CCW 2023-093, the Sustainable Operations Energy Report. Moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Greenland. What's the one? Yeah. Oh, that item CCW 23-093 April 25th, 2023 regarding Sustainable Operations Energy Reporting and Climate Action Planning Overview be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Sorry. Had a little bit of a glitch.
You're all through. Why don't we take a bio break till 10:30 here, because we got a long day in front of us. So we'll take a break before we get to Human Services. Okay, folks, I guess we'll get back at it. I will turn the chair over to Councillor Leduc.
Thank you, Warden, and good morning, everyone. We're on to Section 8, Human Service Consent. So moved by Deputy Warden Coghlan, seconded by Councillor Sandu. Any items they want pulled from consent? Seeing none, so that the following consent items, having been given due consideration, be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8.1, we have CCW 2023-126, Emergency Preparedness Week. Oh, that's my consent. Moving along. On to 9, Human Services, Children's Services. I have we have a presentation here, so I will ask. Oh, there he is. That's okay. I was waiting for you. GM Mina Fazez Baguette. Turn over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. Before I introduce the presenter, I'd like to recognize Director Jan Jansen. Today is her last council meeting as she's chosen to retire after a very long and successful career in the public service. So I'd like to just recognize her. So Chair Leduc, I'd like to introduce our Acting Director for Children's Services, Samantha Zurcher, and she's going to present to us an overview of what Children's Services provides for the county throughout all the different parts of our county.
Thank you. Thank you, General Manager Fayez-Paquet, and good morning, Your Worship, members of Council. I'm pleased to be here today to share some information about the childcare allocations that we have for the 2023 calendar year. So the licensed childcare and earlier system is comprised of the licensed childcare system, the early on child and family centers, and special needs resourcing agencies. So the County of Simcoe is the consolidated municipal service manager that supports these services across the County of Simcoe and the cities of Barrie and Orillia. At the end of 2022, we had just under 200 licensed childcare programs. We had those programs supported approximately 10,000 operating spaces in the childcare sector. There were 34 early on child and family centers between main sites and satellite locations, and we offered special needs resourcing supports through 3 lead agencies. We now have had some increases in those numbers, so we are just over 200 licensed childcare programs. We're at 37 early on child and family centers, and we've supported through the special needs resourcing agencies 3,442 children. The licensed childcare funding opportunities for the childcare system specifically cover a number of different opportunities. So there is childcare fee subsidy, which supported in 2022 just over 4,100 children. We provide wage enhancement funding that's used to increase the wages of those educators working in the system. We were just under 1,700. We're now just over 1,700 educators across the system receiving that funding. In 2022, we provided 53 capacity building opportunities to build the skills and knowledge of those working in the fields. And then we also have general operating grants and the introduction of the new Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program. So that program was introduced last year and began to reduce the cost of care for families accessing licensed childcare by 25%. That funding has increased in 2023 to reduce the cost that families are paying by an additional 37%. And so what that means is that families are paying approximately 47% of what they were paying for childcare in March of 2022. Some of the key changes you'll see in our funding allocations for this year include that increase in funding from the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program, a funding shift from fee subsidy to general operating. So any savings that we're seeing in the fee subsidy lines from as a result of the Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare Program are being moved into operating grants to support those additional costs that the operators are experiencing. We also had a 15-month workforce funding opportunity that just ended at the end of March. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to provide some of an overview of what we shared or built through that program. So of course, as the cost of childcare begins to decrease, the demand for childcare is increasing. And so at the beginning of 2023, the Ministry of Education did determine notional allocations for all municipalities across the province for new space expansion in childcare. The County of Simcoe was selected as the third highest number of spaces due to our growth. And so we have between 2022 and 2026, we're targeting to increase 3,081 new childcare spaces across our area. With that with that increase, and that was announced publicly, we have received a significant demand from operators and licensees across the province who are interested in becoming operators within our area. Some of them are licensees that we currently work with, and others are new to our area. We're in the process right now of developing some consultation and following direction from the Ministry of Education around how those spaces will be allocated. And we're building out a fair and transparent process for programs to apply for those spaces in order to ensure that it is transparent and fair and equitable in how we're allocating them. We do expect, as a result of these increases, additional funding to come later this year. And so once we receive that information around this expansion funding, we will come back with another report for Council. With respect to the recruitment and retention, so the workforce strategies we built in, with incredible support from our colleagues in Service Simcoe, we built out a marketing campaign. So all 47 municipalities across the province released a marketing campaign in January of this year. So you may have heard some of the media ads that we have going. We have radio, we have print ads, we have social media, we have a number of billboards, online news takeovers, and so on. This is an example of one of our current billboard ads. So you will see these moving around the county between now and the end of this calendar year. And then I wanted to share our recruitment and retention video to wrap up.
What is an early childhood educator? It's so multifaceted. We're therapists, we're caregivers, we're moms and dads, we're in your community, we're your friends, and we love thinking about the future. And so that's why we spend our time with young people, because that's the world that we're going to be a part of, and we want to make a difference. We're people who want to change the world, and we're doing that through education.
Early learning for children, birth to 6, are the most formative years in a child's development. Being able to be part of the growing and learning that happens to children during those years is part of what makes this profession so important to myself. As an early childhood educator, you'll have an opportunity to work with children during the most critical stages of their development, the time when they learn about building relationships, developing social skills, learning to walk, learning to interact, learning to express their emotions, to regulate and develop regulation skills. It's just such a beautiful time to be able to be part of a child's life.
Moi, j'encourage les éducatrices de venir vivre dans la culture, de faire la connexion directe avec les enfants, aussi de travailler dans sa langue et d'être parmi une merveilleuse communauté comme moi je suis choyée de faire.
So there are lots of different places that you can work with your ECE as a registered early childhood educator. You can be in the childcare programs, you can be in the school system, you can be at the early on centers, you can be a resource consultant, so there's lots and lots of places.
The opportunity to find work is very, very large. I had work before I finished my college program. I was in my second semester and I had like at least 3 offers for work, but I had one job with like a supervisor role lined up before I was even done my college course, which was very exciting as well as just good to know that this was I was putting myself in a good position.
So as a licensed home childcare provider, I can provide subsidized childcare, and we get Simcoe County funding and special needs support.
The County of Simcoe, in its capacity as local service manager, provides a whole range of supports and professional development to individuals and groups working in the childcare field. So communities of practice, opportunities for mentorships, professional development days and conferences. There's a whole host of supports that are provided.
I feel as a supervisor, I feel very supported that I can reach out to the County of Simcoe, and they are always there for me. If it's a question I need to ask, or if it's a resource that I'm looking for from their lending library, I can always count on them to be that partnership with me in providing the care that we need to for our families and supporting our educators at the same time.
Early childhood education is a great career opportunity for someone who's looking to make a difference in a child's life, a family's life, or a caregiver's life.
Puis c'est arrivé que des gens, des jeunes, me demandent qu'est-ce que c'est une carrière en éducation de la petite enfance. Et pour moi, je leur dis que il n'y a jamais une journée qui est pareille, il n'y a jamais une expérience qui est pareille. C'est pas un travail qui est ennuyant, c'est un travail qui donne beaucoup de motivation, de t'améliorer, de continuer, parce que tu sais que c'est un travail qui est important, puis qui est valorisant.
I think what surprised me the most about being an early childhood educator would be the kind of community that's surrounded by the whole thing. Like, you get to interact with so many families and people. I mean, there's just this kind of bonding feeling of connection just every day when you're at work.
Now is the perfect time to pursue a career as an early childhood educator because there is a huge demand for early childhood educators in our sector in Simcoe County.
You're going to be a part of an educational revolution that's making a difference in the County of Simcoe. There are so many forward thinkers that exist within the County of Simcoe that innovation and change is at the top of their priority list. So if that's what you want, if you want to be a part of a community that focuses on change, focuses on making a difference and innovation, then Simcoe County and early childhood education is definitely where you belong.
We're particularly pleased with that video. It has been shared in its entirety and also in snippets of it, and so it can be found on our website. We have a page called simcoe.ca/ECE, and all of the operators there are operators and programs in the county. We did not use actors, and none of it was scripted, so it's certainly something that we're particularly pleased with. Okay. And I'm going to pass it back to General Manager Fayez Bucket.
Just for any questions, I think. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So thank you for that presentation. Appreciate that. An excellent presentation. That's why we're all here. That's our future generations out there, folks. So let's continue working hard for those folks. So any questions or concerns? I've got a question from Councillor Hammer.
Hi, thank you. You mentioned there was funding for, I think you said over 3,000 new daycare spaces, and a program was being set up to fairly allocate those. I'm just wondering when you see the application process for that opening.
That's a great question through the chair. We expect by late June, early July is when it will be available. We are waiting for some information back from the province. We expect to receive that. We've been told spring, so that could be right till the end of June. And so we're not stopping our work in the meantime. We're getting things ready so that once we have that, we can proceed, and it will come back to council at that time as soon as we have that consent from the province.
That's great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Any more comments or questions? All right. Samantha, again, thank you very much for that. Appreciate the presentation. So I do have a recommendation. So I'll move in a second to put this on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Smith, seconded by Councillor Bell. That item, CCW 2023-065, dated April 25, 2023, regarding the county's provincial child care and early on funding allocations and related guidelines be received, and that program strategies, guidelines, and approaches in conjunction with the 2023 service provider proposed funding allocations as generally outlined in item CCW 2023-065 be approved, and that the 2023 one-time provincial transitional grant be maximized to offset and assist with the new required cost sharing of 50-50 provincial municipal administrative funding and redirect the municipal savings to the social services reserve to help offset future year budget pressures. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. On to section 10. I will turn it back to General Manager Baguette. We have another presentation coming up. Back to you, sir.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. I'd like to introduce our two presenters, our Manager of Community Services, Laura D'Ambrosio, and our Cassandra Vick from Vick Consulting to provide a presentation on our report regarding the system review of our shelter system.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of Council. We're very pleased to be here today to present findings on the homelessness system review and recommendations. I'm going to apologize in advance with my coughing, but I have water with me today. And following this presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions. So in its role as the Consolidated Municipal Service Manager, the County of Simcoe is legislated to plan, lead, and manage the local system of homelessness prevention services and supports across the county, including the cities of Barrie and Orillia. Homelessness occurs when an individual or a family is living without stable, safe, permanent housing and/or the ability to acquire it. Research suggests that experience of homelessness is often the result of system or societal barriers, including inadequate income, a lack of affordable housing, and at times an individual's struggle with mental, cognitive, behavioral, and physical challenges. Homelessness is not a choice, but rather a journey that many find themselves in, one that is often unpleasant, unhealthy, unsafe, and distressing. Effectively addressing homelessness requires collaboration at all levels of government with community-based partner agencies and other sectors, including health and justice. It takes a society to decrease the rate of homelessness and to move individuals into permanent housing. The County of Simcoe funds programs, services, and supports across the continuum of housing. People experiencing homelessness must first be located through community outreach programs. Once identified, the goal is to connect those experiencing homelessness with service providers, which often begins with our shelter system. Those accessing shelters may over time progress to transitional and/or supportive housing on a wraparound model where each of the individual's needs and related supports are identified. Others may leave the shelter and progress directly to permanent housing. County funding allocations are data-driven, with data derived from countywide enumeration, census analysis, and the Homelessness Individual and Families Information System, known as HIFIS. The County of Simcoe leads the local system of homelessness and supports across the region through partnerships and funded service agreements with over 30 agencies. The homelessness system review was originally intended to start in 2020 and was moved to 2022 once the county authorized funding to move shelter participants into a motel model of shelter. Through this model, we were able to identify successes in the system as well as complexities, including the opioid crisis, lack of access to primary care, discharge from institutions into homelessness, and mental health issues. The COVID response identified the importance of a community working together to create improved outcomes. In late 2022, county staff engaged in a procurement process and contracted Vink Consulting Incorporated to undertake this review. This helped us to understand the current state of homelessness and our system so we could further plan, coordinate, and invest to make improvements. Our work continues to align with the 10-year affordable housing and homelessness prevention strategy.
County staff set out some intentions or goals for the future state of the homelessness system in Simcoe County that the consulting team was to use to ground our recommendations. These include paying particular attention to ensuring that the recommendations are evidence-based, ensuring that they meet provincial and federal guidelines and outcomes, including an alignment with a housing first approach. The recommendations were also to maximize the use of homelessness funding and increase system-wide capacity by leveraging your strong performing programs and services. Our recommendations were to also focus on homelessness prevention and reduced reliance on emergency shelter. The recommendations were also to support strong accountability. The review involved 4 key components to inform the findings and recommendations. The first was a literature review of federal, provincial, and local planning and policy reports. The second was an environmental scan of research reports and policy documents on best practices and emerging practices. The third component was an engagement with stakeholders, including local service providers and individuals with a lived experience of homelessness. We conducted 33 different engagement activities, including interviews, focus groups, and surveys, and 250 people participated in the engagement activities. The last component of the review was a review of data, including information from the Homelessness Information Management System, HIFIS, as well as county reporting data and other administrative data maintained by the county.
The homeless system review and recommendations were made prior to a recent announcement of provincial funding through Homelessness Prevention Program. So this report comes at an opportune time. It will serve as a critical tool to guide our investments, which will be strategic and data informed. In late March, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing announced a provincial investment of over $200 million to the Homelessness Prevention Program. In Simcoe County, we were very pleased to receive an increase of 86% from our previous funding. So our current was just over $11.3 million, and we will now receive an allocation of $21 million per year, starting with 2023 to 24, 24 to 25, and 25 to 26. This is also the first time that the ministry has done multi-year funding, so it really allows us to plan out for this investment. Last year, we also had an increase through our federal envelope through Reaching Home, and where we had originally just over $600,000 per year for a 5-year allocation, we now receive $3.7 million. So our allocation is known for the next 2 years, and then we're just waiting to hear what that will be, whether it's a continued 5-year process or another 2-3 year. So we're now in a better position to address recommendations through significant investment of provincial, federal, and municipal funding.
Based on our analysis, we provided 40 recommendations aimed at supporting the county moving towards its system goals. The recommendations can be categorized into some broad areas. They include focusing on homelessness system management functions, so things like system mapping, data-informed planning and funding allocations, contract management, and recommendations related to the planning cycle of service programs. They also include program areas such as Indigenous services and supports, recommendations related to housing, related to the shelter system, related to outreach services, and housing retention funding. So I'll just turn it back to Laura to speak a little bit more about some of the recommendations that the county is currently planning for.
So while the details are in the report presented today, I will speak to just a few of these. The centralized intake, this would be to address a system-wide approach by implementing a county-wide centralized intake process to ensure timely access to available shelter beds and also importantly, access to the resources that are available in community. The Indigenous services and supports. Indigenous people experience homelessness at disproportionate rate and make up a significant percentage of people experiencing homelessness. In our 2022 enumeration, it showed that over 30% of people in the shelter system identified as Indigenous. So we plan to increase funding for programs and services delivered by Indigenous service providers. We will undertake new efforts to enhance participation of members from Indigenous communities in planning and analysis. So the increase to our shelter system and outreach services. The system review identified that our shelter and outreach services in Simcoe County were underfunded in comparison to 10 comparator communities. Increased funding will support operation costs to maintain year-round 24/7 services. This includes support for staff recruitment and retention, maintaining day services year-round, enhancing mobile outreach services, and addressing increasing operating costs. The support of the Housing Retention Fund. This is a prevention strategy to reduce inflow into homelessness, and we would increase funding to prevent programs to support programs like the Housing Retention Fund that pays first and last, rent arrears, so that people can retain their housing. And then lastly, I'll touch on the increased support of housing. Staff will continue to seek out opportunities to create more permanent supportive housing and rent subsidies to promote independent living and improve life stabilization. There is stronger expectation from our federal and provincial governments to submit solid and reliable data that demonstrates program outcomes, financial accountability, and client success. The county remains committed to enhancing a system of supports that is evidence-based, data-driven, and identifies results-based accountability, or outcomes, sorry. The 4 positions identified in the report would be 100% funded with 0 impact on the tax levy. And so our next steps, staff will provide a council report in the later meeting in May 2023, outlining the recommendations for the allocation of the new homelessness prevention program funding. The allocations will align with the recommendations from the system review. The report will also outline a data strategy system and the development of outreach plans for year-round outreach services, and that would include our summer homelessness plan and our winter homelessness plan countywide. Phase 2 of the homelessness system review, which Vin Consulting will assist us with, will include further analysis on the following sectors to improve and enhance services needed. And that would be youth services and supports, including outreach, Housing First regional program, and then supportive and transitional housing. So we'd like to thank you very much for allowing us the opportunity to present today. And I will pass this back to our General Manager, Mr. Mina Fayez-Baguette, who will lead the question period. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that presentation. Appreciate that. Great information in there. Great program. So questions. Okay, I've got Councillor Barrie, Councillor Ripa first.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. I would say right off the top that this is a really good news story, that, you know, an extra $9 million is something that we desperately need and certainly can use. I would like to ask you to talk a little bit more about the integration of services. What we see often is that we have a lot of organizations that we partner with that do good work, and then we see gaps and we see duplication, and also, you know, from our friends at the province, we see discharge that really doesn't work at all. We see it also sometimes from our hospitals. So I just wanted to get more of a flavor of how you see the county working with all of these organizations in order to put together a plan.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. I think the first to answer the first part of your question, we want to develop and strengthen a system, not necessarily individual services. And I think that's the shift that you're seeing in these recommendations, is designing a system that supports people experiencing homelessness in the different stages of kind of their experience of homelessness, which includes from beginning, which is those discharges, whether it be from the health system or the justice system, all the way through an offer for housing. And I do think in order to create and strengthen a system overall, you have to strategically invest in certain parts of those service deliveries, and specifically in those gaps that you've shared. I think this review and the set of recommendations identifies those gaps clearly, what we have been doing well, and certainly the things that we can do much better. And our focus area is to maintain the things that we're doing well, and then find different ways to strengthen or create or enhance or develop the things that we're not doing so well or that aren't occurring as is right now. So that's the overall strategy. How do we bring the agencies together? You know, this is something that I've been focusing on, and our team has been helping us to convene and coordinate all of our service providers, not just geographically, but across the county, to start discussing some of the work that's happening in terms of this review. Basically, again, focusing on the things that are being done well, those best practices, and trying to expand those practices versus the things that aren't being done well or aren't happening at all, and then to see who is best suited to deliver that service, which includes introducing new services and agencies that are at the table but not necessarily participating in the service delivery.
Follow-up? Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, no follow-up. It's just I'm really looking forward to the next steps. Thanks.
Yes, a great question, and I like the fact that we're talking about integration and trying to find efficiencies, and this is a data-driven report, so it's great to see that. I had Councillor Gordon next, and then I've got Councillor Corbell. Okay, I'll get the names down as I go.
Thank you very much, through you, Mr. Chair. Great report. Affordable housing and homelessness prevention are things that impact all of us, but I mean, for my little municipality in Midland, we feel that we're impacted perhaps disproportionately, and maybe that's just because I have my own lens on. And so it's really, really rewarding to see in here that there's some funding set aside for things like day services, which is a real gap in our shelter. You know, it's the county shelter, but it's in our jurisdiction, where right now, without adequate funding or perhaps best use of the funding from our shelter organization, we don't have those doors open most of the time, which means our folks that need shelter are ejected early in the day and left to fend for themselves with no washroom facilities or anything else. So it's wonderful to see some funding in there. I know I've been working with Mina. We've been having some great conversations. There might even be, I didn't see it in here, so I don't know if I should ask about it, but there was going to be some news on some outreach services, something mobile. Maybe if it's not premature to talk about it, maybe you could follow up publicly with that, or we could wait for a report. It is also good to see in this report the affordable housing recommendations. As the county has an affordable housing committee that I'm privileged to sit on, these are some marching orders. You know, not that the committee didn't have any already, but here's some additional work that's been identified through VINC about some ways we can really tackle some of the affordable housing crisis that's in all of Simcoe County right now. So it was a good read, a great report, lots of opportunity, and the team is to be congratulated for not only identifying these 4 unique positions, but finding that they're fully funded, which is always great news. So bravo. I look forward to more collaborative work on these issues and managing the challenges that all of the shelters that are county funded and operated in the county are facing. And then, of course, in my own little world, our little shelter in Midland, too. So thanks. And if you can speak to that outreach service, because that was a real gap in our community and maybe in other communities, it would be great to get an update on that.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Councillor Gordon, to answer the question, we had some end-of-year funding that we were able to reallocate to 3 teams of outreach services. So we've enhanced outreach servicing in the city of Aurelia, the city of Midland, and in the city of Barrie, and mobilized that service with investing in a vehicle for 90 days, and then the team, the new, establishing that new team of 2 that will be out there. This is we were piloting it in the last, let's say, 35 days or so. We were piloting it in order to expand it. And now that we have some of this funding, you'll see us starting to develop a standard of like a system service standard across the portfolio, meaning the same type of outreach service is delivered in the same way across the whole county. So we're looking to continue and extend that service as we know that it will be part of also not only our summer strategy, but also our winter strategy around warming centers. So these would be mobilized warming centers in the winter time as well. The idea with outreach is not necessarily just engaging people and bringing them indoors, but it's building relationships so that we can understand better their level of acuity and their depth of needs, and be able to match those set of needs with the services that are being offered, which includes enhancing the daytime programming as well. So the upcoming report will give details on the breakdown of that investment and how it's going to work across the county, including South Simcoe as well. So you'll start seeing some enhancements and increasing of services across the portfolio.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Great question. Thank you very much. And I've got Councillor Corbell next, Councillor Compton, and then Councillor Fowler, and I've got other names down already.
Thank you, Chair. I actually have 3 questions, to be quite honest. Good presentation. Nice to see that other levels of government have finally realized that they need to ante up. The first question is in respect of the funding for the 4 positions. I see a bit of an overlap there, and these are brand new positions which would be basically, I guess, sought based on expectations, not necessarily the reality that they actually should exist at this present time. So my question with respect to the positions is, and it's always nice to say that, you know, some money's coming from somewhere else to fund the positions. However, I'm just curious to know whether that funding is specific for employment positions or whether it's just general funding that can be used for the program as a whole, because if it's available to the program as a whole, I would kind of like staff to be able to review those 2 positions. As I said, I see a distinct overlap on them, and I'm talking about the analyst and the data manager, the integrity manager, only because, you know, it's probably upwards of $100K, and that funding could certainly be used, if it's available to be used, for other aspects of the program. So that's my first question, please.
Through the chair. Thank you for the question, Councillor Carbell. The four positions, one of the four was previously funded through a different funding model from our Ontario Works administrative dollars. So what we're doing here is aligning it correctly to the service that's being delivered. So this one already exists. It's just we're moving it over. To answer your question, the provincial funding actually reduced our administrative costs for positions, and the county was actually overspent on its amount. So the HPP program introduced a 7.5% in administrative portion to fund positions, like in the actual staff FTEs, and they reduced it in year 2 and year 3 down to 5%. So we were actually using tax levy to fund those positions. Using the federal funding pocket that was shared in the presentation, this expands an opportunity to use your administrative dollars that we were underspent on significantly and not being utilized, meaning it can't go towards programming specifically. So what we did is we shifted the Ontario Works position over there to save the county money and get us down to that, get us closer to that 5%. We actually moved over the remaining, which was around, I think it was over $400,000 that we were overspent on our administrative dollars using tax levy funding, and moved that all under the qualifying federal program so that the tax levy can meet the HPP 5% reduction, and yet we don't, underutilize a funding pocket that can't go towards programming. Similarly, the last two positions that we are creating new, the data analyst, the last three positions, the business integrity and data manager, the research analyst, and the policy development. All three of those would then get us to that full funding from the federal pocket. Therefore, we're not leaving funding unallocated that would just not be utilized in programming. So the idea here is to maximize what we're potentially eligible for, get ourselves under the overspending or the overallocation due to that reduction on the provincial side, and create the positions we desperately need in order to have a data-informed system that finds the efficiencies, finds the duplication of services, finds the gaps. We need live instantaneous data. So if you noticed in the presentation, we were talking about the level of services, and it's a snapshot, it's a point in time. We need data on a daily basis. We need to know how many beds are available every night, how many outreach contact points were made, geographically map those across the county to start predicting the level of homelessness and where it's coming from, understand the discharges into housing, understand the discharges into homelessness to see if we can get to a net zero. All this needs like a live open data set that's transparent so that anyone can click and find our dashboards live and see how we did last night versus tonight versus tomorrow night. So I do think this investment aligns with the recommendations. It puts us on a results-based accountability model where we're looking at performance of service delivery and looking for those efficiencies in order to know how to continuously fund agencies correctly.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, and a very in-depth and fulsome answer. Obviously not appropriate to include in the report, but certainly does shed light on the funds won't be utilized inappropriately, or I don't want to suggest even inappropriately, but they won't be utilized in a way that would detract from them being utilized for the services we'd like to see provide, and it does help balance that equation that you just spoke to. I guess the next point, since you've answered both of those questions actually, would be with respect to the outreach. I think before we were talking about homeless issues here at council at that time, and I did mention that there seemed to be a bit of a gap with respect to some of the smaller communities. In my particular case, I'm going to have to refer to Elmvale. We do have homeless. Some folks have actually lived in the cars last year. We had one fella for a winter period that actually was at a vacant church, staying there over the course of the winter. And there were several times where intervention was sought through the OPP, through folks in the neighborhood to try and get him some assistance. And I guess my question would be, when we're talking about the outreach the mobility aspect, I still see that being primarily targeted towards the more urban centers. And I'm wondering if there might be a mechanism that we might be able to put in place that could better communicate from our municipalities to county that we do have in certain areas some individuals who are experiencing homelessness, so that at least we might be able to bring those people into the fold and provide them some assistance. So that would be my last question. Thank you.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. Absolutely. I think having a centralized intake, which was the first recommendation, is not only just a front door or a main gate for everybody to access services, and it's not just a shelter bed, it's also to activate outreach and mobilize them to certain hotspots and areas where people have identified or seen someone that was homeless. And really this, what it does is it extends our ability to have oversight over those smaller pockets of homelessness that may often be missed or not recognized. I think secondly, with the outreach, we're doing different types of outreach. So we're doing mobilized outreach, but we're also doing street involved and street engaged outreach, meaning working closely with the local BIAs and local agencies, local church or faith-based communities to understand where else they are serving or seeing homelessness, and then working on a strategy to engage people on a one-to-one basis, meaning having our outreach teams that focus on safety go out and build relationships that are meaningful to understand that depth of need in order to drive or introduce or refer those individuals that might be more street involved or might be staying outside or in precarious areas to the services that are being offered, and to make sure that they're connected to casework and case management. So yeah, our vision is to have a centralized call-in service that allows people to identify a need, request or ask for a service, and then deploy or dispatch that service to engage that person.
Very quick follow-on, just out of curiosity, would there be an active engagement with the Ontario Provincial Police in situations such as I just described happening in Elmville?
Through the chair, yes. So I failed to mention, OPP or other local police services would be a part of that. The outreach is kind of connectivity point. There's some really good practices out there where interdisciplinary teams are kind of activated that have police, usually around encampments and things like that. We'd like to see interdisciplinary teams engaging people in encampments from a safety perspective, from a health perspective, from a public realm perspective, and then also from a shelter service and referral program perspective as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you. So on the list I have Councillor Contin next, Councillor Fowler next, Chair Dolan, and then Councillor McDonald, Councillor Snell. So, Councillor Contin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the manager. It was a fairly good presentation, and what we see is a framework of funding being increased, but the end result is trying to find preventive services. Really, what's in between to achieve that is understanding the outcomes and understanding basically the level of needs for different communities. It's a growing situation, and it's probably going to grow more. But if we have funding dollars, it's really understanding how those dollars are going to be spent to meet those outcomes and the needs. So the diversity of needs for each different community are different. I would like to see, or get an answer on the effective use of funding for the collection of information, and then from the recommendations from what is put forth. Again, it's really understanding those needs and using the maximization of the dollars being provided. Maybe if you could just comment or provide an answer to the logistics to developing that framework to actually meet the needs, and is it the right step in terms of long-term planning for the maximization of those dollars?
Through the chair, Thank you for the question. The primary focus of developing a data-informed approach is to be able to start to measure things from a results-based outcome. So basically, the results-based accountability model that we want to introduce and ensure that all of our funded service providers are implementing is it's a very simple analysis. It's asking for how much are we doing, how well are we doing, and who's better off. And basically trying to capture those data points that answer those three questions so that we can better understand where to invest in. So for those who capture really good practices, really efficient ways of delivering a service, they're where we want to invest more in. And for those who aren't doing as well, we can reinvest in others or have them incentivized to find that best practice or duplicate it or capture it. The other interesting analysis we're doing, like another example of that, like to answer your question, is looking at efficiency of use. So for example, a shelter system could offer one bed for one person for 1 year, or that bed could be used 4 times in that same year. So obviously we're looking on the turnover of the use of a bed space, or the amount of engagements we do with the same client through an outreach program. And those will start telling us who's effectively using their space and maximizing their efficiency in a way to capture the most or the best use of the funding that we have. This is a really important moment in time. It's we haven't seen this type of funding investment in over 15 years, maybe here at the county, maybe even more. So for us, we want to make sure that we're strategic in our investment, it's data informed, and it's really looking for that results-based accountability model.
Thank you. Just wanted to follow up with that, because I think basically it's establishing benchmarks to measure the success or the failures, because I think we need to adapt and adjust to those situations, and you really don't know until you analyze and collect the information to make the changes. So I think, again, you may see more of an increase in the years to come, but to level out to a decrease, it's these preventive measures that will have give you a perspective on how to approach things.
Thank you. That's comments. I'm sorry, General Manager, do you want to comment further? Or I think that report speaks exactly to that. It's about data-driven, catching that data and understanding what we need to do to better enhance our homeless position out there. So I've got then Councillor Fowler next, Chair Dolan after.
Thank you. Under the recommendations and the Indigenous service and reports, services and supports, there's increased funding allocation programs to be delivered by Indigenous service providers. Are we talking Indigenous-led supports, or something that we reach out to the Indigenous community to offer support? And below that it says increasing knowledge regarding current available Indigenous-led support services. So do we have that established already, where we go to the Indigenous community and say, what can we do to assist you, or is it something that we present to them?
Through the chair, thank you for the question, Councillor Fowler. I'm going to ask our manager of community services to answer that in that specific question, if you don't mind.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. For the Indigenous services, I believe the goal here was that we were looking at establishing a system where it's services provided by Indigenous services for Indigenous people. So when we look at Truth and Reconciliation, the recommendations, this was brought to our attention several times through the Indigenous community as well, to be able to address their needs in a different way. So we have an opportunity here to take a percentage of the funding, work with a group, and I will mention through our Reaching Home federal funding, we have a community advisory board, which includes several members from the Indigenous community. And one of the goals would be to carve off a portion of funding so that that group could invite in other members to help make a decision about the needs of the communities. But again, those would have to factor in with funding guidelines, and of course, they align with our recommendations already. And we know that the needs of Indigenous communities in the homelessness sector, as I mentioned earlier, are significant, and only their communities know best what they need. And I wanted to just address service mapping. So one of the recommendations, one of the broad recommendations was to have a service mapping, address a service mapping system. So we would look across Simcoe County, identify all services available. So when we're thinking of Indigenous services, we want to know what already exists, what do we need, and not just Indigenous services, but right across all services. That service mapping recommendation will help guide our work as well so that we can identify the gaps in the system. And so for our Indigenous services, we're really looking to the expertise of our Indigenous community to help us to allocate. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you very much. So I now have Chair Dolan. I have then Councillor McDonald and Councillor Snell. Okay.
Thank you. Just briefly, how would the community safety and well-being plan integrate itself into the homelessness strategy?
Through the chair, I'm going to ask the Manager of Community Services, Laura D'Ambrosio, to answer that one as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. I know the community safety wellbeing programs, we have worked with a number of different partners where we have been invited to tables to work on strategies that they're developing. And so we would ensure, as we do with our 10-year affordable housing plan, the plans that exist in communities, that they do align. And we have had some conversations with a few municipalities already on this work. And we'd be happy to entertain meeting with any groups that exist in municipalities to further this. Thank you.
Through the chair, just to add to that too, we're meeting with the, we have been consistently meeting with the consulting group that's managing and coordinating the overall plan. And one of the first things that we did just a couple of weeks ago is they presented us with, I believe, something like 10 data points specific to homelessness and housing. And so again, part of our data strategy is to align those to begin the baseline. Not only from a safety and well-being impact, but also it aligns with our own service levels for homelessness and affordable housing. So we are already starting to even have our data aligned as well. And again, I think we're also working with the long-term care and health services with GM St. Clair on that initiative as well.
All right, thank you for that. I've got Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Chair Leduc. First of all, it's more of than a I'd just like to say thank you to General Manager Laurie and Cassandra for your presentation. And I know that we're all very thankful for the province coming to the table. But I think it's the big thank you is to staff for taking a much factual, in-depth, successful story so that the province recognizes that this is going in leaps and bounds of growth for homelessness. And I just want to say thank you to my colleagues for all the questions that were posed, because we know then that staff and this House can make the best difference to make a difference in the lives of those unfortunate. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for that, Councillor McDonald. Appreciate those comments towards staff. I now have Councillor Snell, and then I have Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, Chair. My question was actually asked by Councillor Cabral over here, but I just wanted to echo, I'm very excited to see that this support services will be able to be transferred into the smaller communities, because we are seeing it in Wasaga Beach, and I know fellow Councillor Hamill has also mentioned that Collingwood is also facing these challenges. So I'm very excited to see this work come forward. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you, through the chair. In New Tech, we have two shelters that are both bursting at the seams, and both still don't have the financial support for much needed expansions. Whereas this report gives them hope that we're moving in the right direction, and it was an absolutely excellent report. There are shelters within Simcoe County that are desperately awaiting additional funds to properly serve their communities, and surrounding communities that don't offer the services. So my question is, when will Simcoe County's local shelters see the financial benefit of this increased funding? Thank you.
Through you, the chair, thank you for the question. I think the short answer is very soon. we're bringing forward the investment plan to the province on a conditional approval basis, meaning we have a deadline of May 1st to put forward that plan. We'll bring it back to council at the end of May, just because of our scheduling, and that will give you a detailed breakdown of how we're investing the funding. You will see, again, as I've reiterated before, we're operating a system across the county and not necessarily focusing on geographic-based services as they are now. So what we're trying to do is create that system standard so that every shelter you walk into, you get the same mirrored services offered. We're mobilizing so that we can move people around to become efficient so that there's no empty bed that gets underutilized at the end of each night. And that includes making sure that all the services are offered all year round and have daytime services. So for those gaps where we're not operating all year round, or we're not operating during the daytime, or we don't have outreach, those are the places where we want to strategically focus on first. And again, that would be our starting point. Thereafter, the data will dictate, and the level of performance will dictate how we increase, enhance, or reduce, quite frankly, those services. So we want to be nimble, flexible in our funding, but we want to give an opportunity for that service to improve and enhance. But we want to be able to do it in a way that makes sense, which means that we have to be data informed.
Excellent. I've got another question. Okay, two more. I've got Councillor Hamilton from Barrie, Councillor Hamilton, and I have Councillor Hamlin.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. I don't want to be the only negative one in the room, but I read this report and I will say I was alarmed. I was quite concerned. Seeing some of these recommendations, I was just a bit surprised perhaps that we needed a consultant to tell us some of these things. I read recommendations that, we have to be assessing shelter and warming scenting needs before winter season. How did we not know that? We have to be ensuring outreach services across the county meet basic needs and connect people to services. That's the intent of outreach. We have to ensure dedicated diversion supports and shelters. And I don't mean to sit here and be critical. I know this is hard work, but to me, reading this, we have to do better. We have to do significantly better. I don't know, maybe it was we were underfunded in the past, and hopefully we can't use that as an excuse going forward. 86% increase in funding, that is unheard of in my opinion, working in the healthcare sector. So I hope we take full advantage of that. I do want to applaud, I think going forward with this consultant in this report was the best first step we could have done. I think under the leadership of General Manager Mina, you've been here for a short time. I think you have us positioned in the right direction, and I thank you for that. I think this is really going to be putting us in a different direction of doing things differently, because we cannot continue to do things the way that we had done in the past. And my request going forward would be, I'm hoping we can have some sort of scorecard that would help us, and me in my role sitting here, having better oversight going forward. So if we can have a scorecard that identifies each recommendation, the changes that have been made, and the impact on an ongoing basis, I would find that very, very helpful to make sure we don't let this get away from us again, and that we are doing our due diligence from an oversight perspective.
Thank you for those comments. You want to, okay? General Manager.
Through the chair, thank you for those comments. I do want to point of clarification. I think sometimes using consultants is a good third perspective to what we often already know. So I wouldn't categorize it as it being a revelation of what we know we need to do. So I just want to make that clarification. I think staff for many years and at the county has done an incredible amount of work to build a system. I think now is just an opportunity and time for it to enhance it and to improve it. And to do it in a way that's strategic. I do think being data informed is important, because not only does it let us know how to manage our own funding, but also go capture the other systems like the healthcare system and the justice system to integrate better their services into our shelter and homelessness system. So I'm excited for sure, and I'm excited, but I can't take the credit for positioning us here. I do think that there's been years of really strong work and support, and excited to be a part of it. Thanks.
Excellent, thank you. And I have Councillor Hamlin last.
Yeah, thank you. I do understand my colleagues' comments about some of the general goals of the report, but I am just so impressed that you know, the report's ready when the money comes. The report is already ready. And I know that there's a lot of work to be done, but I do feel this is setting us out on a good road. There were two things I wanted to mention. One was thank you for the comments in the report for housing first, because unless we get that phrase in our brain and start working towards it, I don't think, you know, we're going to make it. So thanks for that. And secondly, I couldn't agree more about the need to map what social services are available. And I wanted to mention that at the beginning of COVID, our director of PRC brought together a roundtable, and you may know this, but I'm mentioning it in case you don't, of what turned out to be 45 agencies, nonprofits, and so on in our general area to sit around a table and say, what do you do? How can we do it together better? Where are the gaps? Just at a very basic level, even one of the first questions, who needs PPEs? I mean, for that time frame. So all to say, there is a list running in our community through our director of PRC if you wanted to reach out. Thank you.
General Manager, you're good? No, I want to just say thank you very much for all the great questions and comments from everybody. This was well discussed, and I think the report itself speaks volumes for itself. Great to get the presentation. Thank you, Cassandra. Thank you, Laura, for that work. You know, sometimes, and I want to thank you for those questions, because sometimes you need that third eye, like the General Manager said, where you need to actually put it on paper. The pandemic, I think, brought us to a point where homelessness has really evolved and come to a level that we haven't seen. So it's great to see this stuff come to us now, and the funding, like you say, is there. So hopefully we can take this data, analyze it. My fear is if we get so good at it that we're going to get transients coming in and seeing how great our system is. So we want to be careful about that. I worry about the live dashboard. General Manager, you mentioned that, and I thought, Jesus, a live dashboard means we're going to get bus trips up here steady. So is that a live dashboard within our Simcoe County, within our service providers, or is that something that can be picked up by anybody? So maybe just a quick question on that, sir.
Thank you, Chair. So open data sets are meant to be open and transparent across, like publicly open. But what it does is it challenges us, like from a measure standpoint, to be efficient. So if we're efficient, we should be fully utilizing our space, that it identifies to others that, you know, every space is being, every person is being served, every space is being utilized. So I suspect that if we do this well, we'll be serving our community first and foremost, and then always often reinvesting and redesigning to maintain that. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So again, thank you, Councillor, for all those great questions. Thank you for your presentation. Excellent job done by all. I would ask, Councillor Rittman, you started this questionnaire, so can I have you move it? And I would ask, Councillor, I'm going to ask Rilya Mayor McIsaac, if you would second it, sir. Thank you very much. So I have that item CCW 2023-08 dated April 25th, 2023 regarding the 2022 homelessness system review and recommendations be received, and that subject to deliberations in the affirmative, the staff proceed with the recommendations as generally outlined in item CCW 2023-08, and that 4 new permanent staff positions be fully funded through federal administrative dollars to support the implementation of recommendations outlined in CCW 2023-08 in conjunction with supporting the broader needs of the Social and Community Services Division be approved. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I'm into section 11, Human Services Long-Term Care Committee of Management. So I have CCW 2023-114 Simcoe Village Campus Project Update. A mover and a second to put this on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Norcross, seconded by Councillor Van Staven. Question concerns with this report? Seeing none, I have that item CCW 2023-114 dated April 25th, 2023 regarding Simcoe Village Campus Project Update be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. On to 11.2 Long-Term Care Pandemic Funding Update. Moved by Councillor Fowler, seconded by Councillor Smith. I'm going to change it from Smith to Councillor Greenlaw, just to get more people on the floor here. Question concerns with this report? Seeing none, that item CCW 2023-127 dated April 25th, 2023 regarding long-term care pandemic funding update be received. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Moving into 11.3, long-term care and senior services staff. I need a mover and a second for this, please. Moved by Councillor Walma, seconded by Deputy Warden Coughlin. Question concerns with this? Seeing none. So I have item CCW 2023-128, dated April 25th, 23, regarding long-term. I have a question. Sorry. Thank you. Councillor Corbell.
Thank you, Chair. I will apologize. I hope I'm on the right one. Are we CCW 2023-128, long-term care and senior services staff appreciation? Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. The only comment I wanted to make was in relationship to the week-long appreciation periods, and in particular the last line of the report that speaks to various events and whatnot that will be showing our appreciation. I just wanted to ask whether there will be anything of a personal nature going out to the individual workers, maybe electronically or digitally. That's my only question. It's great to have events, but if we're really saying thank you to them, it would be nice, even on behalf of council as a whole, to say thanks for your service. That's my only comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and I appreciate those comments. General Manager Sinclair, do you want to comment on?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We do have a series of communications going out to all staff in our 4 long-term care homes and our senior services, and they recognize each week the various different departments, et cetera. We can, certainly we've worked with our corporate communications to develop those communications to make sure we're getting the message out to everyone, as well as the events and activities. We certainly can provide specific messaging from all of County Council in support during this month as well. County Council has a very long history of supporting our long-term care and senior services, so it would be very welcomed to our staff to do that. So at your direction, we'll take something forward directly from County Council, again, to extend your appreciation and thanks to all of our staff.
Thank you for that. All right. I have a mover and second on the floor for this, so all in favor? Carried. Thank you. I am on to 12, Human Services, Other Matters for Consideration. So 12.1, I have CCW 2023-195, Simcoe County Hospital Alliance funding allocation. So we had a presentation earlier by Julie Vex, so I need a mover and a second for this. Moved by Councillor Norcross, seconded by Councillor Barry. Norris, sorry, Barry. Councillor Norris, I apologize. Wanted to get new people on here. So question concerns with this. We had a great presentation. It talks about funding the dollars to Stevenson Memorial. So, okay. So I will read the recommendation that item CCW 2023-095 dated April 25th regarding Simcoe County Hospital Alliance funding allocation for 2022 be received, and that the applicable reductions in annual capital funding related to the Hospital Alliance Memorandum of Understanding with respect to transfer of care performance standards be waived for the period of 2022 related to the COVID-19 global pandemic and resume beginning in 2023. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Warden, I get to turn it back to you.
Thank you, Chairman Leduc, and I'll turn it over to Chair Dolan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warden Clark. I have a jam-packed agenda. I have one consent item. So any discussion on the consent item? Deputy Warden.
Thank you, and it's actually just an amendment that I would like to put on the floor. And I do have that seconded by Councillor McDonald. If you want to need to read that at this, no, not yet. Clerk Daly, no.
This is the consent item for County Road 21 and Innisfil Beach Road.
No, I'll wait until the actual one that I want to amend then.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Councillor Fowler?
Thank you, Chair Dolan. I just want to put my 2 cents in regarding this matter. We passed this at Town Council because this is a situation that's been going on for a number of years now. I drive that road minimum 4 times a day. I'm on it at 5:30 in the morning as I head down to Toronto, and it's becoming a bit of a joke amongst the community. Between 20 Side Road and Yonge Street, we have literally 4 different grades of tarmac. We have cones all over the place. We have gravel. We have machines. It starts, it stops. It's at a point now that it's just we need it completed. We need to push forward to a way that we can actually just move beyond it, because, I mean, beyond this point, when we head westbound of Yonge Street, we're looking to get the servicing to the employment lands, and we're doing that in conjunction with the town, but it's not moving forward. It's withering on the vine, and it's reflecting badly on everybody. So if there's something we can do to move it, just to get it, the first part completed, and then, you know, we can worry about the other complaints as they come in at a later time, would be appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Fowler. And Jim Elliott, thank you for working with staff to take this matter seriously, understanding it's such a major intersection in our community. Did you have any comments, Jim Elliott?
I would, through the chair. Thank you to Councillor. This has been one of those challenging projects. By all means, we recognize the importance of Innisfil Beach Road and the underground servicing to the community. It's unfortunate that the contractor that we've been working with has not really met their expectations. We're unfortunately having to take legal action in this situation. We will come back in early May with an update report for council, but we've got a plan to get things back on target and get this work completed, and we're working closely with the town and in-service as well to do that.
Thank you, Jim Elliott. Mover and a seconder, please, Councillor Fowler and Councillor Anderson, that the following consent item, having been given due consideration, be received. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And with that, I would ask if there's any other matters for consideration, and if not, I will pass it back to Warden Clark.
Thank you for hurrying through that very long agenda, Chair Dolan. So I'll turn it over to Chair Cox now.
Okay. We have the consent agenda, and it's correspondence from the Township of Springwater. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Warden Coughlin, seconded by Councillor Gordon. Is there any questions or comments? Councillor Gordon?
Maybe I'll defer to my colleague from Springwater first, and then I'd be happy to follow up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I need you to speak into your mic. We didn't hear what you said before, sorry.
Oh, my apologies. No, it was actually just correspondence to be received, and I would actually be putting forward an amendment to have this floor support Bill 5 and endorse it, coming from the County of Simcoe.
Okay. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, and I would second that if we put that on the floor. I just wanted to share that this will be on an agenda. I'm hoping for next Wednesday at our municipal council. We'll all be seeking endorsement from my council to add our voice to the chorus and petition the province for these desperately needed changes. It's unfortunate that it's a very small minority that brings really everything we do into disrepute, but that's all the more reason why we need to make sure that there are efficient controls in place to deal with those minority issues, so that they don't, infect the rest of this process and parliamentary procedure. So I wholeheartedly support this, and I'd like to see it on the floor of this House, but it'll be coming from our member municipality with any luck next Wednesday.
Thank you very much. So I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Coughlin, second by Councillor McDonald. Deputy Warden Coughlin, and I think it was seconded by Councillor Gordon. Oh, it was already brought forward. All right, sorry. Second by Councillor McDonald. The County Council supports the Township of Springwater's Resolution C375C 2022 endorsing Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, and that the motion be sent to Simcoe County MP and MPP and lower tier municipalities. All in favor? Oh, wait a minute. Excuse me. We have a question from... We have a couple of questions. Sorry, I was reading.
Yes, thank you ever so much. I don't know. I guess
it was sorry,
being missed.
Yeah. No, I was Councillor Dolan, then Councillor Bell.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to provide a bit of background on this item through the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. So back when this all, originated in Ottawa with some very, very disturbing behavior, Minister Clark came to AMO and asked for advice on what it should look like, being that his concern was he didn't want to be seen as somebody who was interfering in the democratic process. So we gave him a long list of recommendations, most of which are covered in the private members bill. The one not was that we asked for training for all integrity commissioners so that they'd be more consistent. But happy to support this private members bill, but I wouldn't be surprised if you see a government bill on this in the very near future as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I'll be honest with folks. I did at Springwater Township vote for this. I think two things drive this particular bill, or not this particular bill, but these types of letters. One of them is the fact that the issue in Ottawa, which I hope everybody is aware of. I'm surprised that it didn't result in actual criminal charges, and that I'm going to speak to in a minute. But I've given this a lot of thought as time has progressed. The second thing that drives this bill is the fact that Mr. Bliss seemingly, through omission, conscious or otherwise, decided this would only be applicable to local councils and local boards, not the provincial legislature. I guess they never have any issues, so it's not a problem for them. What I do struggle with is the fact that this is of such narrow focus. We have a situation that this bill proposes where an integrity commissioner, and I'll be honest, most of them are lawyers, they're not investigators, but they take on that role. And I'm very disillusioned that in situations where criminal activity is involved and members of municipal boards and municipalities who have been charged criminally and found criminally responsible, or even pled guilty in some cases, are not in a position to have their seat vacated on a municipal board or a local board. The focus of this permits a council, when the Integrity Commissioner reports their findings from conduct in respect of harassment policies for the municipality, it permits the council at that point in time to direct the Integrity Commissioner to apply to the Superior Court in order to have it heard in a court of justice by a judge. And if that judge so deems it to be severe enough, that judge can order the seat vacated. The problem I have with this is that an individual who sits on council can perpetrate a numerous amount of crime. We've had councillors who have been accused of drug trafficking. You could have someone who commits an aggravated assault against somebody. You could literally have someone who commits homicide and be found guilty and still not be asked to vacate their seat. This is backwards, folks. I think what should happen is if the OPP or the provincial agency deems something, because there is such a thing as criminal harassment, there is such a thing as stalking, there is such a thing as threatening. And if the OPP or policing agency became involved, I see it as the proper vehicle to get this before a judge. And I think what really should be happening is a judge should have the authority at that time, when there have been criminal charges laid in any case, to be able to have a municipal official or someone on a local board vacate their seat. So based on that, I cannot support this going forward because I see part of the reason that it's being driven is the fact that many members of council and local boards are not happy with the fact that Mr. Bliss is specifically speaking just to municipalities and local boards. So I just want to put that out there because the focus continually seems to be on this aspect of this bill, and I see this as a far broader piece that really needs to be tended to by the provincial or even federal government, for that matter of fact, so that when this type of thing goes on, if the police are involved, no matter what the criminal allegation is, if there's a finding of guilt for a criminal offense, then the judge should have the opportunity to have the seat vacated. This is too narrow, so based on that, I won't be able to support it going forward. And I would actually suggest to the members here in the House that this might be something that you might like to reach out to your local MP about. And I should have done the same thing. I'm thinking about it now. it's too narrow a focus. It's one specific item that we're using a sledgehammer on, and then we're going to turn around and let all of these other serious offenses, nothing's going to happen to those folks. There's a real disconnect there, in my opinion.
Thank you very much for bringing that information forward, Councillor Cabral. Councillor Wama.
Just quickly through you to the clerk, because my understanding was that we as municipal officials could be removed from office if convicted of a criminal offense.
Who would like to answer that?
Sure, the chair, I'm going to suggest there's layers to that, to the answer. Keeping it real simple, if you were incarcerated and you missed 3 months of council meetings, you lose your seat. We can grow from there.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? Yes. Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. I totally understand what Councillor Cabral is saying, and he's not wrong at all. I don't personally feel that that objection is really enough to sway me on against support on this. However, I see his objection and raise him one, and this is something I still scratch my head at. You don't even need a criminal record check to run for office or be elected, which is just absurd, you know. Now, that being said, there may be people among us here who have unpardoned criminal offenses, and it hasn't been a barrier for them. But I truly believe that if you can't even you can't volunteer on anything these days without a criminal record check, and yet you could be an elected official and responsible for multi-million-dollar budgets. So that's a head scratcher. It's not contemplated in this bill. I'm just going to say it. I firmly believe it should be part of it. But that being said, this is a start. This is a blunt object or a sledgehammer dealing with, just an absolute betrayal of the public trust by not just the guy in Ottawa, but there was someone in Barrie too who did equally deplorable things that never got convicted. It happens all over the place. And quite frankly, if you spoke to people that were opponents of me, my foray into being sued by my council for not divulging private information that they had no business having, that ultimately I was never found guilty of. That would be enough to, bar people from being elected. And yet it didn't impact me at all. So just to be completely transparent, I think, anyone, you can't be above reproach to be in this office. We're all human beings. But a simple litmus test of at least passing a criminal record check to make sure there isn't a non-pardoned offense for which you've been committed that would disqualify you from holding office is something that I think is aspirational and deserves attention, but it's out of the scope of this support letter. But I did want to talk about it while we are, because Councillor Cabral raises good points. And, of course, there's all kinds of people out there that have committed offences that have either never been charged, convicted, or no one knows. So it is a bit of a slippery slope, but the simple litmus test is if you have a criminal record check and you've been fingerprinted and you haven't applied for a pardon, it's actually called something else now. But if you haven't done that, then that should be a barrier to certain things in life. It certainly means you can't cross the border and impacts your employability to some degree. But again, it doesn't impact public office, which is a head scratcher. So thanks for this, and I look forward to supporting it and what comes next.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Move on to the year-end report, and I need a mover and a seconder to get it on the table. A mover, moved by Councillor McDonald, seconded by Councillor Norris. And I am GM Wilcox. Did you want to speak to this? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to give you a bit of a summary here, and I've got my finance team here, which I'd like to acknowledge. We have Leland Civic, who's our treasurer, and a couple of our controllers. We have Michelle Sims, who's the controller for the Health Emergency Services, the Social and Community Services area, and Kelly Moreau, who's the controller for the Health and Emergency Services area. Our other controller is Jessica, who is unfortunately not here today, but they've done a lot of work on this report. I'll summarize by saying that the good news is we have a small surplus in the year. There's many puts and takes through the report. The way we organize it is we show the overall numbers, and then you'll see by department, and really that's where the explanations come in. A couple of reoccurring themes that I'll point out or the larger themes that hit us. We had significant costs in long-term care related to agency staffing and also kind of the hangover from the pandemic. So additional costs are still really impacting operations last year. We also had significant increase in fuel costs, which everybody has been experiencing, and some other costs related to PPE. We also had higher insurance costs as well. So those were the things. Luckily, we had a big offset. The largest one is in solid waste management, where we had offsets for that occurred in miscellaneous income related to scrap metal and some of the recyclable sales that we had. So that offset, more than offset the extra costs that we had. So that's where we ended up with a $1.8 million operating balance or surplus. Also included in the report are some metrics. So we look at the financials, but we also want to look at how are we operating from a standard operating procedure. So we have some metrics in there that I'd point out show that we are operating pretty efficiently. So, you know, in terms of my area in corporate performance, one of my metrics is I want to be below 5% of the operating costs of the corporation. I don't want overhead to build too high. So we managed to contain that, continue to contain that. It's at 4.4% this year. We have the cost of paramedics on a per call basis recorded, and we've been looking at those. You'll see that those bounced around during the pandemic, and now it's come down to pre-pandemic levels. We also look at the cost in social housing on a cost per unit basis, and those have been managed very effectively over the last 5 years, and we have seen a jump this year, largely in line with inflation, 7.8% increase there. We have a couple other ones, increases in nonprofit housing. Those were some significant costs there. But overall, we have some other metrics that we show. We show that transit ridership is up significantly, and that's a really good thing. We also look at the cost for the collections contract, which was largely flat until we renewed the contract, and then there were significant increases at that point. But we had this great contract prior to that, and you could see that the cost per ton was relatively flat. So those are I just wanted to point out. Teams here, if you've got any specifics at all, happy to answer any questions on that. Back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Councillor Walma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say that happy that we find ourselves in a surplus position after all the stressors that you mentioned. That's great. I have a second, I guess, motion after we go through this one here, but some of the questions would be pertinent. What are we doing currently to grow our reserves? Because that's where we're allocating this money based on staff's recommendation. How successful have we been in investing our reserve money to date? And I guess one of the questions is what can we do to improve that portfolio? And I know that the town of Innisfil has gone down the road of working with third-party consultant, I guess, One Investments. And I guess I'm just, a general question, are we exploring investing our reserve money as a county?
Certainly. Through the chair, thank you. Kind of a series of questions there, Councillor, if I could kind of pick at those. First off, in terms of reserves, our reserves are in line with the direction that we've received in terms of putting those dollars away. So you see the reserve outline shows the amount that we've had in the committed dollars and then the amount that's left over. We're suggesting we direct this reserve balance into the general contingency reserve at this point in time. We don't have anything specific, but there's significant projects that are coming up, especially in our social housing builds, our long-term care builds as well. So there will be, I think, ample opportunity to direct those funds. In terms of investing those reserves, we've been using largely, and I'll ask the Treasurer to comment further, LAS, which is a part of AMO, provides this opportunity through one fund to invest in different portfolios. And we've been using that as well as keeping a large portion of our cash balance in the bank, largely due to interest rates. With them so low a year and a half ago, we were not comfortable putting them in investments. You can see that even the most conservative bond fund is likely still underwater today because of the significant increase in interest rates. So I'd ask Leland to comment a little bit on that, and then I'll get back to you in terms of the investing further. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, the main investments that over the last in 2022 were through a high interest savings account with one fund. That majority of our cash balance, along with our normal Scotiabank checking account, which provides a higher interest than most are receiving, so they're comparable in high interest, low risk, as well as a smaller portion of the portfolio is in a investment. As Trevor mentioned, it's in corporate bonds or government-related bonds, and last year's yield was it was a break-even point for those, whereas we made the majority of the investment income was through the high interest savings accounts. The range in interest rates for last year, I believe it was from less than 1% to, at the end of the year, it was almost 5% interest that we were earning in our bank account. Thanks.
So that provides you a bit of a background in terms of how we've done in terms of investing. We will be bringing a report that we do every year to the Finance and Audit Committee. We're due for that next month. The Finance and Audit Committee that will outline all of that in more detail, and it'll come through to this floor as well through the Finance and Audit Committee. As far as investing specifically, we have not, or managing investing, we have not been active in looking at that because of the significant program at the county that we're embarking on in terms of projects that will utilize our cash. So I don't anticipate that we're going to have a lot of cash sitting around for many years. But it's not to say that we could not look at something like that. Leland does have regular meetings with the treasurers, and we would be happy to explore if there's a desire for other municipalities to try and kind of combine together and do that. We were happy a couple of years ago when LAS launched their program, and we've been using that largely like a lot of other municipalities to balance that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, GM Wilcox. I was just through, I guess, to you, Madam Chair. I have a motion about basically a staff report to the Audit and Finance Committee. Do you think that this is a separate motion or an amendment to the, would it be a further that?
I will defer that to the clerk. Separate? Okay, we'll do it separate. But I do have other people who have some questions, and we can come back to it.
Thank you.
Councillor Leduc.
Just comments I have. So when I reviewed this report, great report. Trust me, we are doing excellent at the county level. I would love to see a report like this in Bradford where I have 25% cash equivalent to operating expenses, where I've got a AA plus credit rating. I mean, there's some great things here. But there's $1.8 million in revenue, our actual revenue that is over and above our expenses. And I ask, again, when we get to budget time, that we be as prudent as possible, because I believe that we could have done some things. I look at the scrap metal sales we had where it was astronomical, the scrap metal sales, but in the budget that we just passed, 2023, our scrap metal sales were going to be poor in 2023. I don't know about that, but I suggest that there's opportunities for us to review this, because I cannot bring a report like this to Bradford. My deficit, they've got $71 million in external debt. I can tell you what, we've got way more than that in external debt, and that's because of the investments we have to make in Bradford. So I speak about Bradford right now, but I say all of us, these are great budgets, and I would certainly suggest that we be a little bit tougher on some things. And I'm not here to reduce services. I'm not here to say that at all. I'm saying that we have to owe it to our residents to make sure that we manage the finances here correctly. And I swear to God, Trevor's team does a great job. Don't get me wrong. This is not a bad thing I'm saying. It's in a good position. This report is a good position for us, but I think we have some room to make some adjustments when we need to. So I just ask next year we do some adjusting if we can. Only if we can. I will be there at budget time with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I guess my question is just, you said that a lot of the rebates that we received through the commodities was a reason why we're seeing that surplus. Knowing that commodities are very volatile right now and dropped. I mean, last year cardboard was $200 a metric ton. We're sitting at $20, maybe a little bit more. Are we expecting to see a deficit for the 2023 year? How are we looking at that or monitoring it?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. We did see the drop off in Q4. So fortunately, we did already get a precursor to that, and we adjusted the budget accordingly. So at this point in time, we don't have any indication that it's dropped precipitously down, but we will bring a report to council if we see that. We did bring a report to the prior council when we saw that we were above to give an indication of where, our projections. At this point, we don't see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fryer.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and a comment and then a question. I congratulate the staff. I like to see low risk categorizations for your various metrics and such. My question actually is in regards to the surplus. We are lucky enough to be in the surplus situation and the reference to deficits. So you're recommending it goes into general contingency reserve. I'm assuming that that's where, if there was a deficit, that's where the reserve would be touched. So that was just a clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Wilcox. Just sitting here looking at the health benefit portion here, and I just wanted to know whether or not there's ever been discussion in the past with respect to maybe providing an option to employees for either participation in the health insurance plan, benefit plan that county offers, or whether or not it might be a possibility to also offer them as an option a health spending account. And the reason I bring that up is in the traditional sense, although benefit plans, defined benefit plans for health do provide higher benefits if they're utilized, they don't provide necessarily the same level of versatility, let's say, as a health spending account does. And the other aspect of the health spending account is that the money only carries over for a maximum of 24 months, if I'm not mistaken, which means that if it's not used, it comes back to the county. So I'm just kind of asking, given that staff, and there's lots of them in the county, are all unique in their own personal situation. Some have families, some may have another spouse that has an insurance plan that may find it a little bit more valuable, but just given the fact that they tend to be more economical for the provider, the employer, whether or not that's anything that's ever been considered by the county. So just thinking about that because I see the increases here. And
certainly, thank you very much for that question, Councillor. We did actually adjust our benefits at the end of the year. It actually was one of the things that we used to reduce our budget going into this year. So we have a portion of our benefits is funded through a health spending account. But it's a small portion, and we've got we use it primarily for, I believe, in our part-time employees as providing some kind of benefit for them. Now, what we did is we used a consultant to guide us in terms of the best value for our benefits, and that's what we came up with. But to your point, we're continuing to evaluate, and we will definitely consider that if our experience shows, then we'll move more and more in that direction. Thank you. Yep.
It sounds like that's a bit of a hybrid system, and I certainly appreciate that. I was thinking more along the lines of actually providing them, hey, you've either got a health spending account, if that's what you desire, here's the fixed amount, or your hybrid version if it works for them, and maybe even the third option where their benefits are just defined benefits through their health plan. So that's kind of where I was headed with it. I didn't realize, and I appreciate you commenting to say that you kind of have a bit of a hybrid plan in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? So I need a mover and a seconder to put this on the table, please. Pardon? Did I already have to? I wasn't sure. It was a while ago. Okay. There see no more questions or concerns. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Walma's motion, you have that? Okay.
Good.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just, I guess, to spitball on what I was chatting about before, a lot of the smaller municipalities, Tiny specifically, we haven't had the, I guess, the capacity to look into the investment side of things to the extent that I would have hoped we would. So the, I guess the amended motion, or the motion that I would put forward is moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miskimins, that staff report to the Audit and Finance Committee on the feasibility and steps involved in the creation of a joint investment board to invest money held in reserves with the terms of reference that would focus on increasing return on investment yields for participating member municipalities. So a similar concept to, I would say, what Innisfil and Bracebridge and it was Kenora was on the list of municipalities. We could look at, I want to look at doing something similar in the county.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, comments? Yes. Councillor Dolan.
Thank you. Yes, LAS has a one investment and set up a joint investment board for that very purpose for any size of municipality to be able to invest through there because they have the expertise. It was our understanding the City of Toronto set up an investment board and it costs them a lot of money, like, and even to get the caliber of people to sit on that investment board. So what I'm suggesting is probably an amendment that would say instead of Simcoe County setting up their own investment board, I think that would be that would take any profit or any revenue from the investments and would actually not. I don't think there would be enough for us to have our own investment board, but perhaps to look at investing with the joint investment board at LAS.
So I'm hoping that in that staff report, those options will come back because I was not aware of them.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. Through the chair, to the GM, could we just? I think the key word is the feasibility. Yeah. And I certainly understand that, and I do not think that it'd be a bad option to go through this process. But I guess I'm looking to the GM as to what would be the steps involved and how much staff time would be, given to this project and something like this.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps rather than defining it as a specific investment board, we could investigate the feasibility steps involved in self-management of our investment self-management or something to that effect. Because I think that's what Councillor Dolan is getting at. There's different flavors of that. There are going to be costs involved for sure. So that's the idea, is that you want to get a return that's better than what your cost is. But we could bring that back. The other thing that I would like to do, and we don't have to specifically say it here, is we want to poll our other treasurers, your treasurers, to see what the interest would be. Because if there's only a couple of municipalities that are interested in that, will change the flavor of what we're looking at. Thank you.
So are we looking for a rewording on this?
Yes.
So, Chair, if Councillor Walma agrees that his motion could be amended to read such as feasibility and steps involved in the investment self-management to invest money held in reserves and so forth. So,
I am fully supportive of that. Again, this was to bring out all the options. So if staff came back and said LAS, this is the way to do it, then I would be fine with that too.
Yeah, we had them come to us and they just made a presentation and then we. Okay, I have Councillor Fryer, then Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Chair Cox. Through you to General Manager Wilcox then. As you mentioned, it's the plan to go to the Audit and Finance Committee with the investment report. Do you see this being combined with the investment report? And if so, do you see this delaying that presentation to Audit and Finance?
Through the chair, no, I see it as two different reports. We have to provide that investment report every year. It'll provide the returns and defines the policies around our investments. This would be a good timing to have this right around the same time. So we'll attempt to get that to the committee next month.
Just to follow up, if I could, Chair, and I neglected to mention, and I was going to mention this, is that I commend staff for their decision to stay fluid with your cash situation, because, as we just heard, it went from 1% to 5%, and even investing in GICs, you would have been in the 3% range. So, again, I wanted to make sure I commended staff on that regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cabell?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Mr. Wilcox, General Manager Wilcox. Just a quick question. Are there any investment vehicles that the county participates in that would not be available to municipality? That's one, and just a quick follow-up on that.
Through the chair, no, they're the same.
And I guess my next point might make things a little bit simpler is, would county be in a position to share their data regarding their investment that they currently hold, so that municipalities might be able to mimic it, especially if it's, you're doing really well?
Through the chair, I don't want to say that we've got some kind of secret sauce here in terms of investing. In fact, we look like geniuses right now because we kept it in the bank, but we were cautious. I will say that we were very cautious. We knew that we were at historically low interest rates and did not want to take a chance on fixing rates related to that. Because typically, when you look at short-term investment funds, you would invest in bonds, you'd invest in fixed annuities or things like that, and they've all gone upside down. The interesting thing, we've been looking at debt, because we're gonna need to borrow eventually, maybe not this year, but next year or the year after, for our large projects that we're kicking off. The curve right now in terms of the debt curve is inverted. So your short-term debt is actually less than your long-term debt right now. So it's typically the other way around. So it's a very interesting time. So we've been cautious of that, but we're happy to provide and share all information with member municipalities. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any more questions? Councillor Smith. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, first of all, Trevor, you're way too modest for your own good, in my opinion. I think the decision that you and your team made was a brilliant decision, because we're seeing today, if you read the news, watch the news, there's a lot of large corporations out there with some pretty brilliant people, but they got caught up in it, and you didn't. So congratulations and great work. Your team and yourself are my experience in my time at county council is that you're pretty brilliant, and we're fortunate to have you. We're also fortunate to have a lot of the folks in our individual municipalities, and so I fully support this idea. I think it's much more complicated than we might think on the surface when you're joining 16 municipalities or attempting to, but I think the premise of it is a great idea. I think the more dollars we have to invest, the better return is going to be. I mean, that's just the simple economics of scale in this. So I fully support it, and again, just congratulations to Trevor and the team for being brilliant individuals.
Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Moved by alternate Councillor Walma, seconded by Councillor Ms. Kimmins, that staff report to the Audit and Finance Committee on the feasibility and steps involved in investment, self-management to invest money held in reserves with the terms of reference that would focus on increasing return on investment yields for participating member municipalities. Any more questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. I will now, are there any other matters for consideration? Then I will turn it over to the warden. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Cox. So we have one in-camera item. Is there any need to go in camera? Does anybody? I'm not seeing any, so I'll look for a mover and a seconder for the motion. Moved by Councillor Anderson, second by Councillor Fryer. The direction in camera contained within confidential item CCW 23-124 dated April 25th, 2023 regarding labor relations or employee negotiations voted upon and approved in accordance with section 239(6)(b) of the Municipal Act. All in favor? That is carried. Next, just before we adjourn, I will clarify again, the May 9th, it is a council meeting, but then afterwards there's a bus tour to take us over to Lake Simcoe Regional Airport, where you'll get a tour of the facility, a lunch, and a brief presentation by Cartwright and our Economic Development Office. So today is the last day to register for that. Whether you're driving yourself, in the case of Councillor Greenlaw, you're 3/4 of the way home, are you not? So I could understand you not wanting to ride a bus back here again. And one more announcement that Deputy Warden Coughlin forgot to make.
Thank you, Warden, and thank you for your indulgence. I forgot to mention that this weekend is the 55th Annual Maple Syrup Festival. It is a jam-packed day. It has a pancake house all day, vendors, live entertainment, and everybody's favorite, the log sawing competition. So thank you to all of you who have already signed up for that. And for those of you who have not, we're still accepting challenges. So please do join us.
Yes, you got to be there to watch Councillor Walma and I win that contest. So we are using a chainsaw, correct? Councillor Van Staveren, you had something quick you wanted to announce?
Just a quick thing. I just wanted to reach out and thank. We heard some thank yous today for our staff, but to Jane Seymour and her staff, on April 13th we attended I'll say the grand reopening of the Sunset Manor, and it was a tremendous success to see the faces of our staff and people there. They really appreciated us being there. Their volunteers were there, and it was a good event to be at. So I just say thank you to Jane and the other members who were there as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor. So I will look for a motion to adjourn at the April 25th, 2023 meeting. A committee of the whole be adjourned at 12:31. Moved by Councillor Cox, second by Councillor Dolan. All in favor? That is carried. So grab some lunch, folks, and then I think we'll try and do a working lunch if we can. Take a quick break and grab some lunch and bring it back in, and we'll get rolling.